We've stalled for many hours with the spaceship. It's already the limit. Han Zhao inhaled deeply and said slowly, "We have to abandon ship." The people were shocked. The spaceship was the only thing that they could depend on. If they abandoned the spaceship, it would mean they have lost the mobility, and they would really become fish in a barrel. Once we spread out underground, Dark Star will stop bombarding the surface. Because without protection from the spaceship, we will be buried alive if the underground space collapses. What they want is to capture us alive. Therefore, they'll most probably use the hovering ships and send out troops to search slowly. This was a risky plan, and the mercenaries exchanged nervous looks. Although the plan did make sense, the risk of abandoning the spaceship made them hesitant. Abandoning the spaceships looked desperate, but it could squeeze out more time and stall them longer. The bombardment continued, and time waited for no man. Goa and Porter discussed a little, then finally clenched their teeth and agreed with carrying out the plan to abandon the spaceships. So, Goa asked, "What is the plan?" "The plan is," Han Zhao explained in detail. In the sky, dozens of Dark Star bombardment fleets were in a neat formation, dropping bombs down on the surface. Mushroom clouds rose up one after another. "Commander, the interrogation is completed. These captured mercenaries have never seen the secret message bead before. We searched their clothes and inside their bodies as well, and they don't have it," an officer said. "These captives were Serlini and the others. At least the range is smaller." Sarota nodded. Therefore, the last two ships were the most suspicious. At this time, the Sky Ring spaceship appeared on the image from the hovering ship fleet. The hovering ships had almost lost them, but now they were catching up. The Sky Ring spaceship's speed had become much slower, and it even bumped into walls from time to time. Bang! Lasers hit the spaceship's shield. It was as if the Sky Ring spaceship had changed its pilot. There were no more dazzling dodges, and it looked very clumsy. Sky Ring spaceship's accelerator broke and lost its power. It glided forward and shattered about a dozen stone pillars before crashing into the stone wall, stirring up thick smoke. The hovering ships surrounded the spaceship, but the Sky Ring spaceship was silent. The Dark Star warriors rushed in, but there was no one inside. Report: "There's no one in the spaceship." It was the spaceship system's autopilot. Sarota slammed his hands heavily on the table, and with rage in his eyes, he said, "They've abandoned ship." Sarota sneered. "They have some guts to gamble like this." Then, he loudly ordered, "Stop the bombardment. Hovering ships, split up and search for vital signs. Send out ground troops to continue to pursue." Sarota looked to the side and said, "Ember, you'll lead the ground troops." Ember nodded and left the command room. Hundreds of egg-shaped airdrop cabins were ejected from the mothership, falling toward the ground. Inside were all Dark Star supers, including Ember. This time, in a hard-to-find corner underground, a silver-white metal sphere was parked quietly. Inside the metal sphere was a sophisticated cockpit, where Han Zhao and a few others were. This was a transporting tool that Han Zhao had been building. On the outside, it was just a metal sphere, but its structure inside was complicated. It could travel in both sea and land as well as air. The sphere was made up of many layers. The most outside silver layer were both the armor and the mobility device to move on land, as the sphere was suitable for rolling movements and was able to change direction and speed easily. When it rolled, only the outside layer would move. The inside pilot cabin had an individual structure and was separated from the outside layer so it would not spin as well. In his previous life, the players had called this the car ball. Han Zhao had built it while he was on floating Dragon Island. He had placed it in the spaceship, and now that they abandoned the spaceship, it was time to use it. Han Zhao was sitting at the controlling seat. His eyes sparkled. The underground terrain did not tremble anymore, which meant that Dark Star had stopped the bombardment as expected, which made him feel relieved. From now on, Dark Star will send out ground troops to carry out the search and start a game of cat and mouse. The mercenaries have all spread out, so there'll definitely be some people that'll get caught. Hope we can stall for longer. The car ball rolled backward and disappeared in the dark and twisted underground tunnel. Darkness was mercenaries' cover, which made the search more difficult. There were 200 to 300 people in the two spaceships. Now that they had all spread out, the number of targets that Dark Star had to capture changed from 2 to hundreds. The hovering ships split up as well, slowly searching every corner with their cone-shaped blue searchlights. Not long after, the ground troops led by Ember arrived underground and started their thorough search. The alarm suddenly rang. The radar showed that, not far away, a new fleet was jumping toward this direction, and its numbers were growing rapidly. Whose forces are these? Shivate's face changed. Through the porthole, he saw that in the space behind the Dark Star mothership, streams of light dashed across and stopped, showing their true identity. This was a fleet temporarily gathered by Sky Ring, Blades, and Purple Gold. If you mess with our people, we will mess you up, no matter who. Sarota was a little moved. He had thought that mercenaries were extremely divided, and he had never thought that capturing a small group of mercenaries would attract an entire mercenary fleet. Sarota has to admit he had underestimated the mercenary industry. The Alliance fleet gave them only 10 minutes, demanding Dark Star withdraw all their forces immediately, or they would start attacking. Sarota's relaxed mindset was nowhere to be found, and his face was grave. Of course, he was not afraid of the Alliance fleet since the Dark Star mothership was a moving space station base and was very well equipped. However, if a direct conflict broke out, the damage would exceed the forecast of this operation. After some contemplation, Sarotas came to the conclusion that there would never be such a good opportunity again. Letting these mercenaries return to their organizations would mean that their search range will expand. If these mercenaries split up, it would be very troublesome to find them again. And these were just the smaller problems. Letting these people back to their organizations might very well lead to accidents like the bead being given to someone else without Dark Star's knowledge, or the bead being lost on some godforsaken rock due to the person dying during a mission. There were too many possibilities, but now all the mercenaries that might have come into contact with the bead were right there. This time, Shivate gave a serious announcement to the Alliance fleet and the Dark Star mothership. On behalf of the Holy Stone Border Guards Army, I warn you, if you start a battle here, we will see it as a provocation. We will very likely see you as enemies and interfere with the conflict. The announcement was clearly very effective as soon as it was sent out. The Alliance fleet opened fire at the Dark Star mothership straight away without saying anything. Colorful lights exploded in the dark space. The battleship formations carried out all kinds of tactics, and lasers were fired at each other non-stop. The mercenary fleet and the Dark Star fleet started to battle. Shivate's face turned black, and he was furious. They had completely ignored what he said. "Commander, what do we do now? Which side do we help?" "Help your ass, we watch." Shivate clenched his teeth. One side was a chaotic, evil, and very vengeful terrorist organization. Another was a chaotic, neutral, and lawless mercenaries. Helping either side was a waste of military power. Furthermore, he did not dare move his fleet. If they moved, who knew how Black Raven would react? After watching for more than half a day, Shivate received an unexpected communication request. A pureblood Godarin's face appeared on the screen and said with a serious face, "I'm the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of Godarin Civilization, Plenipotentiary Representative of Godarin Civilization. I hope the Holy Stone Civilization can interfere with the battle immediately and attack Dark Star." Shivate's face turned formal and said, "This is our local affair. You have no right to interfere. Dark Star is an evil force that has spilled innocent blood in many places. They're the common enemy of civilizations. Watching them carry out their crimes is a very irresponsible act." The Godarin sounded very justified. "Sorry, I only listened to the Marshal's orders." Shivate held his ground firmly. "I'll only interfere with the battle if the Marshal gives me a direct order. If you have questions, you can send a request to the Foreign Affairs Department." Actually, as the commander of Formation 3, Shivate could take care of matters of this scale himself, but he still chose to use the Marshal's name. It was obviously an excuse. He knew very well what Godara was thinking. Dark Star was Godara's mortal enemy, and they had made a rare appearance, so Godara wanted Holy Stone to help them to fight Dark Star. However, Holy Stone and Godara were not strategic allies, so they had no obligation to help. Furthermore, it was a sensitive political issue. As one of the commanders of the Border Guards Army, Shivate was definitely not going to follow the requests of another civilization. They had already lasted 2.5 days. The mission was already completed. At this time, more than half of the mercenaries had already been captured, and very few were still running. This meant that the Mercenary Alliance fleet and Dark Star had been firing at each other for more than 1 day. If either Holy Stone or Black Raven interfered, Dark Star would have retreated, and the mercenaries would have been saved. However, the two civilizations were only watching, not helping either side, which led to the stalemate. The Alliance fleet could not pick up the mercenaries. Putting our hopes on these mercenaries was not a good idea indeed. Han Zio shook his head. Luckily, he had already contacted Ames and requested help as another layer of insurance. At this time, the tunnel ahead suddenly collapsed. The car ball made a sudden stop. A new group of pursuers walked out of the hole from the wall, and the leader was Ember. "Found you. I won't be as careless as the last time." Ember was expressionless. He raised his Esper power to the maximum, and his battle-intent soared. His eyes had been fixed on Han Zio for a very long time, and now he had finally caught up. Han Zio's face changed a little. Him again, this is not good. The great mechanic Han himself was not afraid of Ember. They would not be able to kill each other if they started a fight. However, Ember's power was too destructive to his friends around him. Hurlus was already considered to be quite strong, but if he faced Ember, he would be turned into dust in an instant. That Esper power was too powerful, and it could even be called a walking human dust maker. That guy is very dangerous. Retreat. Han Zio did not have any desire to stay. He pulled the joystick, and the car ball crashed through the wall on the side as they retreated. The last time that they met, Ember got a taste of defeat from Han Zio. He had met quite a number of mechanics, but Black Star was the first mechanic that could use his own body to drag the battle without using machinery. Plus, Han Zio was like a fated enemy of his power. Ember had thought about how to deal with Han Zio, and he had come up with some plans. Thus, he had been waiting to meet Han Zio again. Now they had finally intercepted Han Zio. Seeing the car ball turn to run away, Ember immediately activated his power. The walls in all directions started to move as if they were alive. A large amount of black and gray particles gushed out like a black cloud, winding around the car ball, turning into all sorts of shapes such as spears and blades, creating sparkles on the moving armor of the car ball. Han Zio suddenly realized that something was wrong. He turned around and looked at everyone else. All of their faces were filled with veins like they were struggling with all their lives, and they were unable to move. Stop, or they die. In the distance, Ember was reaching out his hand with a cold face. Han Zio was the only one who he could not do anything about. But in the case of the other people inside the car ball, he could use his power on them through the armor. Han Zio frowned a little. This was what he was most worried about. The two players were not a concern. Even if they died 100 times, he would not even blink. But Hurlus, Arashia, and the others were different. They were his weakness when facing Ember. Han Zio was definitely not going to stop, and he would not hesitate on this matter. He was just worried about these two characters that he had spent so much effort to recruit. Don't care about us. He won't kill anyone. We can't be the reason to cause our entire team's destruction. The energy on Hurlus' body was flickering. He was resisting the Esper power from Ember, and even with all his might, he could only speak while stuttering. Sand fog flew out of Arashia's body, and she was being decomposed as well. She looked down at her body as confusion flashed through her eyes. Most normal life forms would be curious about what came after death, but they would only have one life, and when they discovered the answer to that question, it would also mean that they had left the world of the living. Arashia, on the other hand, had countless opportunities to try it, so death was not unknown or mysterious to her. She could see her own ending, a new life. She had been through it countless times, and she knew that she would not die. However, a new life meant that her memories would be reset again. She did not have any memory of what happened after death, and she could not remember anything about what happened before she died. She could not help but think of Han Zio's words. If she did not have the memories of her past life, even if she received a new life, would she still be who she was now? Would that be just another form of death? So, I can die after all, Arashia mumbled. Suddenly, a sense of trepidation was born in her heart. When this thought appeared, a change happened within her body. The feeling of her body being controlled suddenly disappeared. Arashia realized that she could move now. The world in her eyes was different. It seemed brighter, and many small dots of light were swimming in the air like fish. Her senses became completely different from just a moment earlier. Then, she realized that she was floating, and she saw the shocked expression on the people beside her. What happened to me? Arashia looked down at her body. It was not a physical body anymore, but a half-transparent luminous body with a dim glow of bluish gold. Light particles floated around her. Her senses were not her body and head anymore. It was like she was no longer limited by a physical form. Energy life. Han Zio glanced over. He was shocked as well. The characteristics that Arashia was showing now were the characteristics of energy life forms. Her physical structure changed, so of course, she was not controlled by Ember anymore. He did not have the time to think of the reason for this to happen, but a thought appeared in his mind. Try to touch the energy core. Arashia did as Han Zio said. A thin tentacle extended out of the ball of light, passed through the cockpit wall, and came into contact with the energy core. The light particles in her body flew into the core through the tentacle. With the sound of electric currents, sparks appeared on the engine, and the output of the car ball increased tremendously, and went into overload mode immediately. The car ball's speed increased instantly. It jumped right into the gap in front and finally got out of Ember's power range. Hurlus' decomposition progress stopped at his left shoulder. He was covered in sweat, holding onto his hollow left shoulder, and his face was filled with agony. Other than him, the Volga brothers suffered some damage too. However, Ember's main target was Herless, who had the strongest resistance, so they were still in a relatively good state. None of them were maimed. Ember and the others stopped at the edge of the gap and watched as the car ball extended its balance wings and flew away at a high speed. Ember failed twice on the same target. He yelled at the communicator, "Is the search team here yet? Target has disappeared, track it immediately." However, the reply was very unexpected. 1 minute ago, the mothership sent out a new order. Give up this mission. Everyone, return to the mothership and retreat immediately. The other side of the communicator sounded very anxious. Ember's pupils constricted in disbelief. How could it be an order to retreat? The secret message bead was very important to Dark Star. Now that they were not far from succeeding, unless there was an accident, it was impossible for them to give up halfway. And this accident was definitely something that the mothership could not deal with. The order was not to be disobeyed. Even though Ember was very unhappy, he could only watch Han Zhao and the others get away while he turned around and retreated. What had happened above? 15 minutes earlier. A new force has appeared. That's, Floating Dragon Island. The interest of countless spectators in Shattered Star Ring who were watching the news rose immediately. Floating Dragon was Dragon Emperor Aim's territory. Almost everyone in Shattered Star Ring knew that. They were very curious. Why was Floating Dragon there? Grimner paused and thought of a logical explanation. Our crew has just checked Floating Dragon's route. It just so happens that it came to Fawn Galaxy Star Zone 4. Apparently, it's just passing by out of coincidence. Holy Stone and Black Raven's fleets are surrounding the battlefield. I believe after some communication, Floating Dragon will take a detour. Seeing the Floating Dragon Island was still approaching and would crash onto his fleet soon, Shibate immediately sent out a message to Floating Dragon Island. Attention Floating Dragon, attention Floating Dragon. I am Holy Stone Border Guards Army 3rd Formation Commander Shibate. A battle is underway ahead, and we have locked down this area. Please go around. Just 1 second later, Streamlight received a reply. Jenny's cold voice sounded, and she only said 2 words. Give way. A tint of rage appeared on Shivate's face. This was his first time meeting such an outrageous passerby. Not only did they not want to go around, they even wanted the entire fleet to move away. Regardless, Floating Dragon had the right to be this way, and Shivate did not dare mess with them. Floating Dragon did not seem like it would stop at all. It approached in a straight line and would soon bump into the Holy Stone Fleet formation. Shivate's face was terrible as he clenched his teeth and gave the order. All units spread out. Terminate the lockdown and give way to them. The Holy Stone spread out hastily and created a path. Floating Dragon passed through the formation and casually entered the battlefield. The viewers were awed by how dominant Floating Dragon was, but no one felt that Floating Dragon came just to interfere. At this time, the Alliance fleet still could not break through Dark Star's defenses. They contacted the mercenaries who were being chased, but they could not pick them up. They could only watch as the communication channels became silent one after another. Their organization members were being caught right in front of them, and the rage from that was expressed directly in the strength of the Alliance fleet's attacks. From just wanting to go around Dark Star at the start to now being on a killing spree, it was getting bloodier over time. At this time, the Floating Dragon Island entered the battlefield. The fleets of both sides hastily moved aside. It was like the pause button had been pressed for the heated battle. Sarota was shocked. Why is there still interference? Didn't Holy Stone and Black Raven lock the battlefield down? This is Floating Dragon. Both sides stopped. Floating Dragon became the focus of everyone. Everyone, including Dark Star, the Mercenary Alliance fleet, Holy Stone, and Black Raven, waited for it to leave as soon as possible. They were fighting properly, and suddenly a passerby appeared. Plus, it was someone that they could not mess with. How were they going to continue fighting? However, Floating Dragon Island stopped in the middle of the battlefield. What's going on? Why did it stop? The captains of all the parties were shocked. Was Floating Dragon not just passing by? They already moved away and cleared its path, so why was it not leaving? This time, an extremely piercing alarm triggered on the detector of every battleship. Attention, space ripple appeared nearby. High energy reaction. Calculating energy rank. The accurate calculation failed. Area of effect is fluctuating, cannot be displayed. A blue dot appeared above Floating Dragon and expanded quickly, turning into a spinning ring of light. Inside was a white fog that was only 2 to 3 meters large. It was nothing that people would pay attention to in the wide universe, but now it attracted everyone's attention. High-grade secret spell, physical entity teleportation door. Then, a snow-white long leg stepped out of the ring of light. Ames, who was in a black dress, walked out. Her black hair extended from behind her back right to her ankles. On her beautiful face was her careless expression as always. Like those countless battleships could not even make her eyebrow move even the slightest bit. The commanders' faces all changed. Dragon Emperor, why is she here? Just as everyone was stunned and guessing what Ames' motive was, it suddenly happened. Ames saw Dark Star, and without saying a word, a violent force field gushed out. The armor of the dozen or so Dark Star battleships nearby bent inward and exploded like fireworks. The entire process looked extremely easy. The battleships made from Dark Star technology were as weak as pieces of paper in her hands. She could turn them into paper balls in an instant. Sarota's face changed instantly, having not expected this at all. Why did the Dragon Emperor attack them? Everyone was shocked. Shivate suddenly realized and yelled, "She's not passing by. She wants to help the mercenaries." The Alliance fleet was stunned, then became overjoyed. Their morale grew tremendously. Dragon Emperor is reinforcing us. Everyone, attack. Panic finally appeared on Sarota's face. The subordinates around all looked at him and anxiously waited for him to give an order. Inform everyone to retreat immediately. No, wait. Inform the fleets to protect the mothership. Form a defense formation. Cover the mothership to escape. Dragon Emperor's name was as impactful as thunder. When they met Ames, everything about the mission was thrown out of his head. Sarota only had one thought now: minimize the damage and run for their life. As soon as he gave out the order, he left the commander room and ran to an escape pod. The Dark Star fleet contracted their formation, forming a shield formation and protecting the mothership like a wall, blocking the focus fire from the Alliance fleet. Behind layers and layers of protection, the exterior of the mothership started to fade away. It started to go into stealth and back away. Seeing this, Ames' force field held onto the entire floating Dragon Island, then slammed it down. The floating Dragon Island covered in the golden shield was like a high-energy meteor. The Dark Star battleships were like tiny beans in front of it. The defense formation shattered straight away. Floating Dragon Island slammed into the mothership, unleashing burning sparks on the shield, and a small half of the entire mothership was shattered. The floating Dragon Island was Ames' territory, palace, and weapon. Ames' name was known across the entire Shattered Star Ring, but the times that she had shown her destructive power were very few. The impact of seeing such unbelievably great power with one's own eyes was like a hammer knocking heavily on their heart. The Dragon Emperor had arrived. The car ball flew out of the earth gap against the rain of rocks, then stopped at the planet's surface. The hatch opened, and Hanzio jumped out, wiped off the dust on his face, and looked up. Magnificent. Luckily, floating dragon is hard enough and did not drop down together, or this planet would definitely have exploded. The pursuing Dark Star troops had retreated long ago. The tide had turned, and Dark Star had become the ones running away with the Alliance fleet chasing close behind. Ames stopped in front of Hanzio and the others and said, "You're all fine. Seems like I arrived just in time. Only free after 3 days, you really are busy." Hanzio narrowed his eyes. It had not been long since he joined the Floating Dragon faction, so Ames' impression of him was not strong, and now was a good opportunity to have more communication with Ames. It was very beneficial to have a good relationship with one of the strongest people in the Shattered Star Ring. They chatted back and forth very quickly. The others were ignored. The atmosphere was weirdly silent, and countless pairs of eyes filled with shock were staring at these two people having a casual chat. The 3 deputy army commander turned around stiffly with awkwardness on their faces. They had misunderstood. From Ames' actions, she obviously did not come for them but was called here by this stranger mercenary. Was he also one of the mercenaries being chased? Why is he so close to the Dragon Emperor? What's his name? After hearing that Hanzio was a member of Floating Dragon, the way that everyone looked at him changed. The organization under the Dragon Emperor was superior to most, and Dragon Emperor was willing to go to such great lengths to save her subordinate. Black Star's size was not large on its own, but its background was too strong. It was as good as a representative of Dragon Emperor outside Floating Dragon, so no one dared to underestimate them. Black Star was immediately added to their list of people not to mess with. At this time, a notification appeared on the interface. The mission was completed. Mission rating B. You have received 1,200,000 experience. You have received +3 renown. He had lasted for 3 days, so the rating was 2 grades higher than the lowest grade, and the reward had increased significantly. Hanzio thought that it was quite okay, not too much but not too little either. In the case of the new dungeon, it was fixed. It could only create the scene during the 3 days from Dark Star's pursuit to Ames's arrival. It was a fixed dungeon. Only large events create series dungeons. The requirement for warfare dungeons should be quite versatile. Since the name is related to Ames, maybe it's because she has legendary characteristics, and that increased the influence of the event. Han Zio guessed. This is the first dungeon that exceeds the version limit. After letting Ace Reporter Bun Hit Dog add some materials to it, it should gather some popularity. Also, as an NPC who's able to give out dungeons of higher levels, my standing will become higher too. Han Zio blinked. Standing was like money, no one would say it was too much. Han Zio looked at the wound, frowned, and said, "The bones and the flesh are no good. It was bad luck to meet Ember. I knew this day would come, but I never thought it would come so soon." Hurlis forced a bitter smile. Many of the Sunal warriors were disabled. He had hardened his resolve long ago, just that when it actually happened, he still could not control the sadness and pain in his heart. Han Zio comforted and said, "Old Hurlis, you don't have to be too pessimistic about it. Many advanced civilizations have the technology to cure broken limbs, such as an incubation pod, nanotechnology repairs, or supers with healing powers." Right, about that. I know a pair of sisters that can even save someone after death, not to mention losing a limb. Really? Hurlis was shocked. He had thought that he was going to lose his left arm forever. Now that he had heard there was a chance to recover, his morale immediately increased. "They're people of my home planet. As you know, I left my mother planet to save a disaster of the future. Before I find the solution, I can't go back. Furthermore, the power of these sisters is not yet strong enough. You'll have to endure it for some time. I will build a mechanical prosthetic arm for you for now." After comforting Hurlis, he turned to look at Arashia. Arashia still looked like a human made of light. "How are you feeling now?" Han Zio asked curiously. "My vision changed, my senses changed, and the control of my body changed. Apparently, I can extend them infinitely, without the limitations of physical forms." As she was saying, Arashia changed her shape many times and got used to the new changes very quickly. Usually, changing shape will change one's mind too. "Do you have any special thoughts?" "No." Han Zio scratched his head. "Are you able to change back?" Arashia tried slowly. This ball of light kept changing shape for quite some time. Then suddenly, she seemed to have found the way. The light particles quickly contracted and condensed. Then the light started to disappear, and she turned back to what she looked like before. Arashia tried many abilities. She could turn individual parts of her body into an energy state, and she could also turn her entire body into an energy state. In her energy state, her form was no longer limited. But when she recovered to physical form, she was only able to turn back to what she looked like originally. If she was wounded in her physical form, it would disappear after she turned into her energy form and back to her physical form. This type of a spur power was considered as shapeshifting, but it could also be considered as elemental controlling. Another difference was that Arashi's shapeshifting was different from those of a single element. Although it looked like she turned into light energy, when she sent energy into the car ball energy core, it automatically changed into the compatible electric energy. This meant her energy form could change. Han Zio was knowledgeable, so he realized Arashia's potential very quickly. This was a walking battery and a universal energy source. Being able to change energy property meant that there was a chance for her to change into very high-level energy, such as particle energy or psionic energy. As for the strength, range, energy limit, and other matters, these would require her to train her power to increase. As soon as Arashia awakened, her starting point was close to grade C, and her power potential was very high. "You're a super now. Although Hurlis and I are not Spurs, we can still guide you on how to use your energy. With your potential, your strength should increase very quickly," Han Zio said. He did not guide Arashia to become stronger just because of the related mission requirement. It was also to have another person with combat power in the mercenary group. After receiving the communication request from mercenaries, he told the operator to direct it to him immediately. He was prepared to personally give an explanation and fake some sincerity. He adjusted his shirt and introduced himself. "Hello, I'm Holy Stone Border Guards Army 3rd Formation Commander Shiva." Before he finished introducing, Serlini yelled at the communicator using his local language. After being translated through the translator, it was easily understood. "You moron." Han Zio felt much livelier when he heard that. "NPC cursing isn't muted, nice." Serlini was cursing like a machine gun. The words that he used were very descriptive and lively, including various positions. The nouns included Shivate's ancestors, parents, wife, descendants, and so on. Han Zio was enjoying listening to it on the side. He felt a sense of familiarity. Shivate was stunned by the curses. He could not even interject. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and his entire body was trembling furiously. I'm going to go to his colony as well. It's along the way, so how about giving me a ride? Han Zio said. Haha, no problem. The mercenaries tidied the place up for a few hours, recycled everything valuable, then the fleet took off. Han Zio walked on the street alone. He had gone to Golden Palace to find that master of identification to open the secret message bead. He wanted to see what was inside it that was so important to Dark Star. The spaceship was still waiting at the dock. Han Zio did not waste any time and headed directly toward the target. Han Zio found the place easily and pressed on the doorbell. After a while, the door opened. An old Godarin walked out and looked at Han Zio puzzled. Who are you? Hello, Master Angleton. I have come to you for help after hearing about you. I hope that you can help me open an item with magic security measures. Han Zio recognized this person as the target, so he went straight to the point. To his surprise, Angleton was confused. It has only been 3 months since I moved here. I did not notify anyone yet. How did you find me? Han Zio was stunned for a second, then he realized. At this period, the players in his previous life were still in their novice planets. He was too ahead of time. Luckily, Angleton had moved here this early, or it would have been awkward if he could not find him. Angleton could not figure out why but did not dwell on it. He invited Han Zio into his house and said while he was walking, "You're the first customer after I moved house. It has commemorative significance. I think I should write this day in my diary." After Han Zio paid the fees, Angleton placed the secret message bead inside the analytical magic array, flipped open his thick magic book, and started channeling. Ding! The seal of the secret message bead appeared in the air. He drew magic lines on the array from time to time, solving it bit by bit, just like opening a lock. The mage class and mechanic class were known as the vastest and complicated classes. There were many types of machinery, ranging from nanotechnology to battleships, from nuclear weapons to psionic cannons, from internet technology to artificial intelligence. It was very versatile and mostly about technology. The branches of the mage class were very complicated as well. There was elemental, secret sorcery, blessing, spacetime, shape manipulation, summoning, curse, and so on. Mages could learn spells from multiple branches. It had no limitations. The great mechanic Han played a mage class in his previous life before. It required very high skills, emphasizing on creating combos by using all kinds of spells, and it had countless combinations. It was the complete opposite of the simple and brutal pugilist class. When battling other players, one had to pay attention to details and make a lot of calculations. It was very suitable for technical players with good brains. Oh, that was except for Fire Blast style and Summoning style. These two were more brainless than pugilist. There was no need for any analysis or whatsoever. They just have to finish their mana bar, and there would barely be anyone standing. Let me see what on earth is inside. Han Zio took back the secret message bead, took a deep breath, and slowly turned it. Without the seal, the secret message bead was easily split in half. He finally understood why Dark Star had spent so much effort in tracking this down. The significance of these two things was beyond ordinary. He had almost snatched Dark Star's lifeblood away. These two things were connected to two huge conspiracies of Dark Star. They were the origin of two big events. One of them was Planet Aquamarine's main storyline in version 2.0, Mutation Disaster. He had a flash of insight and connected the dots. Dark Star bought these items from another organization. The seller is outside Shattered Star Ring, so they chose to send one of their subordinates to deliver the goods, who happened to be a Silver. He followed a tourist group here and planned to deliver the goods secretly. However, just as the Silvers were having a tour, they were suddenly robbed by slavers. The carrier was unlucky as hell, and that forced Dark Star to come and find the goods. Then, coincidentally, the other Silvers hired us. They did not know about the deal behind this. Everything that happened was because of the first accident. Han Zio was astonished. Through many coincidences, he had ruined Dark Star's secret deal and robbed them of the goods that they had spent an outrageous amount of money to buy. The mutation source was already Generation 7, so it had definitely been tested in another place before. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, more than one notification of triggering a new mission popped up in the interface. You have triggered a ranked main storyline mission. Mission Introduction. You accidentally ruined Dark Star's private deal and discovered the source of the mutation disaster. Dark Star has secretly planted mutation sources in many mother planets of civilizations. When the virus enters its mature stage, a terrifying disaster will arrive. Defending against the disaster is every life's responsibility. Mission requirements. Clean up the mutation disaster virus and protect the planets where a disaster is going to happen. Planet Aquamarine. Progress 0 divided by 30 million. Planet Barifos, progress 0 divided by 21 million. Planet Dawn, progress 0 divided by 19 million. Success requirements. Successfully protect any planet mentioned above before the mutation virus reach its mature stage. Failure condition. All planets are defeated, and all survivors are forced to leave their planet. Reward depends on contribution. Remarks. Even if the virus spreads and causes the overall progress to decrease, individually earned progress will still be calculated into reward rating. The main storyline mission of the next version. Han Zio's eyes sparkled in surprise. He did not expect to trigger the main storyline of version 2.0 in advance. This mission is different from the one players would receive. I remember that the player's mission is just to protect planet Aquamarine, but my target includes other planets as well. Is it because I got the mutation source? Han Zio was a little surprised. This was a good thing. It gave him more choices. Of course, he was definitely going to protect planet Aquamarine first. Not only was it his home, but it was also for the players of the next version. The status of the mission at this moment was frozen. Only when the timeline reached version 2.0 and the disaster broke out would the mission start. In my previous life, Godera took a very long time to invent the cure. If I give them the mutation source, they will be able to invent the cure earlier. Han Zio contemplated on the issue. This was probably the best way to maximize the use of the mutation source. However, he had to think of when he should give it to Godera. If he gave it to them too early, the contribution points would not be counted into the mission, and he would be suspected too. He looked at the other two new missions. You have triggered a ranked mission. You have triggered S-ranked mission. Master Angleton, can the magic seal be recovered? Angleton nodded and said with a smile, this secret message bead used an ALM of 6-layer lock structure, and had 3 mixed magic arrays embedded into it. Normal mages wouldn't be able to crack it. Luckily, you found me. I am specialized in analytics and identifying, so it's not difficult for me. I did not crack it the rough way. I left a lock clasp, so even an identification apprentice can recover the seal. Han Zio's eyes sparkled, and he said, then can you write the recover spell into a one-time use scroll? No problem, but there's an extra charge. Just 100 Enas. Han Zio's face twitched. This reminded him of the tragic experience of him going bankrupt. Angleton's kind smile suddenly became fraudulent in his eyes. Mages were indeed all profiteers. On the way toward the dock, Han Zio found a hidden corner, took out the mutation source and extractor, then opened the magic scroll toward the secret message bead. With a flash of light, the secret message bead could not be twisted open anymore. It returned to its original state. The only difference was that Han Zio had taken what was inside. Then, Han Zio took out his communicator and contacted Wilsender. After he finished the call, Han Zio returned to the dock but did not continue to take the ship. He brought all his members along and exited the ship, expressing his intention of going somewhere else. Old Hurless, you take everyone back to Jubilee Hub. It was a tiring journey, so you guys should have a good rest. I have to make a trip back to Floating Dragon Island. With such a dependable officer, he did not have to bring the players alongside him all the time. The Golden Palace was very prosperous, and it had many docks. Han Zio easily found a galactic travel agency, and told Hurless to take the players, Arashia, and the Volga brothers and return to Jubilee Hub. He found another travel agency and headed toward Floating Dragon Island. In the guard's base, Han Zio met with Wilsender. The moment that he saw Han Zio, he immediately rushed over enthusiastically, placed his arm on Han Zio's shoulder, and pulled him to the side. Then he said softly with a face full of excitement, the plan you mentioned, I think it's quite interesting. I told Jenny about it, and she agreed. Did you bring the stuff? Han Zio took out the secret message bead and passed it to Wilsender, then said, do as we discussed. By the way, you know how to act, right? I can teach you if you don't. Do you think I need you to teach me? Wilsender said with disgust. How do you think I cleared my name to join Floating Dragon? Just wait for my good news. He then took the secret message bead with a smirk, gathered his subordinates, and took off in a spaceship. The spaceship drew an arc, then headed toward Holy Stone's direction. With a flash of light, it disappeared and jumped. Why is this guy more in a hurry than me? Han Zio shook his head, unsure whether he should laugh or cry. What he did not know was that everyday Wilsender was in Floating Dragon. He was either catching small thieves or maintaining order, and now that he could go out and stir up some trouble, no matter whose trouble, he was as happy as going on a vacation. As an ex-galactic pirate and a hybrid demon, chaos was in his blood. The fact that he could endure the boredom and stay in Floating Dragon was all because of love. Are you Holy Stone's commander? Wilsender said with an expressionless face. Shivate nodded. Holy Stone Border Guards Army 3rd Formation Commander Shivate. May I know why you've come? Yes, here's the reason. A member of Floating Dragon was chased by Dark Star some time ago, and the Dragon Emperor personally attacked and defeated Dark Star. The mercenaries that were rescued exposed the fact that Dark Star's target was a black bead. Black Star reported this to me, and I ordered my subordinates to search for it on the Floating Dragon Island just in case. To my surprise, the bead was really on Floating Dragon Island, and it turns out that one of my guards found it. He turned the bead in, and we plan to give it to Godora. Since your territory is nearby, I would like to ask you to help give it to Godora so that we don't have to waste time to travel. Wilsender said with a solemn tone as if these things had really happened. He took out the secret message bead and placed it in Shivate's hand while he was still stunned. This, what, wait. Shivate was completely lost and could not form a complete sentence. The item has been delivered, I'll get going now. Wilsender turned around in a cool manner. He came quickly and left quickly, leaving a hot potato behind. To Shivate, this was a disaster that fell from the sky, and he could not even reject it. Although this was a sensitive matter, it required little effort to help out, so there was no need to not give Floating Dragon face. Dark Star was very clear in how important this was to them. They wondered what was inside. Currently, Holy Stone was faced with a choice. Should they open the secret message bead and take a look? The answer was a definite yes. Since it passed by their hands, even if they did not take it, at least they had to take a peek and know what was going on. Anyway, the seal could be recovered, so there was no reason to be afraid. Holy Stone quickly dispatched an identification mage, who spent a day opening the secret message bead. However, the result left them dumbfounded. It was empty. How could it be empty? What did Dark Star want with this? Or was there a hidden message in it? This made Holy Stone realize what would happen if they gave it to Godora. The secret message bead was empty, and Godora would be suspicious, thinking that they had taken what was inside. And they could not even prove they did not. Holy Stone was frustrated, but a thought appeared in their mind. Did Floating Dragon take what was inside? Was passing it to Holy Stone just to frame them? But was there even a need for Floating Dragon to do this? Dark Star would not mess with them anyway. Holy Stone initially wanted to hide the fact that they opened the seal. Now they had no choice but to contact Godora and tell them the truth, that there was nothing inside from the start and that they did not take it. It was empty when Floating Dragon gave it to them. Floating Dragon probably took it long ago. Godora's reaction was straightforward. Do you think I believe that? How dare you, Holy Stone? On Floating Dragon Island, Hanzio heaved a sigh of relief after hearing from Wilsender. The blame has finally been thrown to someone else. Although Dark Star failed once, they would not give up so easily. They would still track the secret message bead, and the mercenaries and himself were the top targets. This was a hidden danger. Hanzio had done this to clear his suspicion and divert the attention so that he and the other mercenaries would be safe. Godoran and Holy Stone would most likely keep it a secret. However, the next step of the plan was to have Wilsender accidentally leak the information. When that happened, for the sake of not being targeted by Dark Star, Holy Stone would definitely emphasize the fact that they gave the secret message bead to Godora. Dark Star would then have no need to guess where the secret message bead was and target Godora directly, not affecting others anymore. This would mean that the hidden danger was resolved, and that was very important to Hanzio. Inside a dark and narrow space, a pair of long asleep eyes suddenly opened. The back of his palm was giving off a dim light. A microchip was planted inside, which received the signal and vibrated softly. The vibration happened in the vessels and bones, awakening this person from his sleep. Finally, after a while, the wait for the spaceships on the surface finally ended. Their target had appeared. Before the Dragon Emperor arrived, Saroda had given the retreat order. However, when Asper knew the enemy was Ames, he knew that the mothership would most likely not be able to escape, so he had taken a risk. He had decided to stay underground. In a deep cave, he had formed a carbon structure with his power and sealed himself, controlling his heartbeat and blood flow, entering a fake death state. As he expected, these allies that boarded the fleet to retreat were all killed by the mercenary fleet, Holy Stone, and Black Raven, turning into fireworks in space and becoming dust. After Saroda's fleet was demolished, the mercenaries had caught the mothership's highest commander, Saroda. Therefore, they did not bother to search the entire planet for a possible survivor. This Dark Star team had been completely defeated, so there was no need to waste more time. Therefore, Ember had survived. Important officers like him all had a location microchip planted in them. After everyone left this planet, a rescue spaceship came to pick him up. Tell me, what's the situation now? Did Saroda and the rest all die? Ames slammed Saroda's mothership down. We received attacks from both Holy Stone and Black Raven, and the fleet was completely defeated. A part of the members of the ship survived, including Sarota. They were transferred to Godara. This was just reported by the Colton News. They were all sent to the Rainbow Prison. Ember clenched his teeth and said, "What about the secret message bead?" We heard that the secret message bead was picked up by a floating dragon guard, then given to the Holy Stone Civilization, which then gave it to Godara. Ember's body shook, and he growled in a low voice, "So, you're saying, our sacrifices were completely meaningless and did not make any impact at all? We suffered such a catastrophic loss. How can it just be over? Even if we cannot beat the Dragon Emperor, she has to pay the price. She attacked us to save Black Star, so we shall find an opportunity to kill Black Star, showing her that we're not easy to mess with." This time, a heavy and powerful yell stopped Ember's words. In important times like this, it's unwise to mess with a strong enemy. Remember, Godara is our true enemy. Anner was the mentor that developed the potential of Ember's power and guided his path. He was a high-ranked officer in Dark Star, one of the few great individuals in the organization. He looked down at Ember and said in a low voice, "I can see you're resentful. Tell me, who is the source of your anger?" "Black Star. He's a mercenary group captain under the Dragon Emperor. I failed against him twice. No, thrice. Ever since I started working for the organization officially. These are the only 3 failures I've ever experienced. He's caused me great shame, and he has special abilities that counter my power. Only his death can brush away my shame." Anner intercepted and said coldly, "Childish. Narrow-minded. The organization has spent an enormous amount of resources on you and raised you to be a strong warrior, not to let you fight irrelevant people. The organization has a lot of hope for you. The responsibilities that you bear are beyond your imagination. A small mercenary is not someone that you should concern yourself with." Ember lowered his head and asked, "What should I do?" "Anger has affected your sanity. This is an unforgivable mistake. For the next year, you're not allowed to carry out any missions. Stay in the base, focus on training and self-reflection." "Understood." Ember nodded. He respected Anner a lot. His mind calmed down, and he accepted the arrangement. Hurlis was waiting at the door. When he saw Hanzio come out and approach him, he said, "Captain, Lurden and the others arrived at Jubilee Hub 2 days ago. They're waiting to meet you. Lead the way." The Sunal mercenaries greeted Hanzio. Lurden was sent out as the representative to express their appreciation. Hanzio sized these people up. Many Sunal mercenaries were disabled and had mechanic prosthetics. He had read the resumes of these mercenaries earlier. More than half of them were Grade C supers, and a small portion were Grade D. It was not suitable for Grade D supers to become mercenaries. It was simply too dangerous. However, the Sunals were facing very tough times, and they needed every bit of help they could get. So, they had no choice but to let stronger mercenaries help the weaker ones. The Sunal mercenaries exchanged looks. Lurden coughed, took a step forward, and said, "I shall be the first one to test then." "No need, all of you together. Saves time," Hanzio said. The people were stunned. "We have 100 people here, and you want us to attack together. Isn't that too arrogant even for a Grade B super?" A sense of anger surfaced in their hearts. They felt they were being underestimated. "Although we are here to work for you, you'll regret taking us lightly." With anger on their faces, the Sunal mercenaries spread out and drew their weapons, preparing for battle. The team of 100 men slanted forward slightly, ready to charge forward. Their united presence was like a lion that was about to attack its prey. Opposing them, Hanzio looked so solitary. Only if they were taken seriously would they get better treatment. They decided to go all out and showcase their full power. "Since you want to be beaten up, we will give you a good beating." Hanzio moved his shoulder and felt the compressed orbs on his belt. At this moment, he suddenly felt a sense of déjà vu, like he had gone back to the first time that he used the mechanic class to shine in the arena and demolish kids from everywhere. From that time, his path as a booster had started, and he had never looked back. This was not just to test the Sunal mercenaries, he was also testing his actual strength and earn their respect. The Sunal mercenaries had joined him purely for his influence. They actually did not look up to him for his strength. Most of the mercenaries now looked at the Black Star mercenary group this way. Many people were jealous. They felt like Black Star had become related to Dragon Emperor out of pure luck. Otherwise they would just be a third-tier group. Compressed orbs flew out of his belt one after another and floated around him. Magnetic energy activated immediately, and these compressed orbs were spread out by the energy and hit the ground as fast as bullets with a clank, expanding instantly. The setup was complete in an instant. The next second, 22 ground artilleries and 14 hovering artilleries appeared, firing at the 100 opponents simultaneously. The flashes from the muzzle were 1 meter long. Some of them were high-caliber gunpowder artillery that used special magazines, and some were electromagnetic artillery. The firepower coverage of 36 artilleries did not have a blind spot. The formation of the Sunil mercenaries was broken immediately. The Sunil mercenaries had trouble taking a single step, and they were immediately disadvantaged and struggling. On the other hand, Han Zio was standing still with hands in his pockets and a calm face, like the extremely violent explosions happening at that moment had nothing to do with him. After gaining the compression technology, both the depth and breadth of a mechanic's combat abilities would drastically increase. They would gain the ability to take control of the situation or even turn the tables immediately. The focus was to deploy the machinery as fast as possible, and the right combination of machinery at the right place. The speed of deploying that machinery would have a very large impact on the outcome of the battle. This was just a spar, so the Sunil mercenaries who fell onto the ground were dragged off the battlefield by Hurlis, who stood on the side. Ever since the battle started, he had been kept busy by doing this continuously. He had never been given a chance to even rest. A pugilist mercenary flexed his legs, then jumped up into the air, drawing a parabola in the air, wanting to jump over the floor filled with traps and reach Han Zio. At this time, a metal trap that he jumped over was suddenly triggered. A grenade shot up into the air and exploded with a bang. A blue, net-shaped current extended out from the center of the explosion. This was a capturing trap formed by long, thin metal cables with a high voltage running through it. This guy screamed in agony as his skin was burnt black by the current. Then he fell down to another repulsion trap. An invisible force pushed this guy up into the air again, and a few artilleries turned toward him and focus fired. The bullets pushed him out of the area. He fell to the ground, unconscious. This stopped the other mercenaries from wanting to jump up. It's not so easy to jump across all that. Han Zio smiled. There were landmines in the traps, and there were also traps that could sense objects above them and attack accordingly to prevent enemies from getting close in midair. Within the range of his mechanical force, any machinery received bonuses from him. Some artillery was placed beside him, and its power was enhanced multiple times. Whoever was at the front would face the most violent and heaviest attacks. Because of this, the mercenaries spread out and charged from all directions, diverting the firepower from the artillery. Another batch of compressed orbs flew out and dropped beside him, expanding into 20 or so beast-shaped robots. Their size was about the same as medium-sized dog breeds, but they were covered in black armor and had a streamlined body like cheetahs, like armored panthers. There was an opening on both of their shoulders, exposing the triple-mounted gun barrels from the machine guns inside. Their tails were very swift and looked like a scorpion tail, at the end of which was a sharp alloy blade. Han Zio had prepared 3 combos. One was the multi-turret firepower coverage style, which did not require any technicality. Another was the trap style, which required a little bit of control, mainly regarding where to place which traps and whether these traps could protect him and limit the enemy's movement. The last was the hound style. The hound style was controlling a group of small mechanic beasts, entangling, harassing, and culling the enemies like hounds, as the basic machinery that formed this style was called mechanical hounds, hence the name. This blueprint was rather easy to obtain. Han Zio was using an enhanced version of mechanical beasts. Han Zio's ability to build chips was still at the basic level, so the mechanic Black Panther's combat ability was not independent enough. The number of orders that they could recognize and carry out was limited, so they could only be used to harass. With the combination of artilleries, traps, and mechanical beasts, it was as if the Sunil mercenaries were walking in a quagmire. Every step forward was difficult. Bang! As he was thinking, a mechanical Black Panther was blown away and smashed into an artillery, bending its barrels. Han Zio looked over. Finally, someone passed through the lockdown. Lurden was covered in a green light. Having finally arrived before Han Zio, he growled, and the green light turned into a spear in his hands, which he strongly thrust forward. In the blink of an eye, the compressed orb on Han Zio's necklace expanded, and a white mechanical suit covered him instantly. Without saying anything, Han Zio raised his hand and slapped down. Boom! Lurden was smashed onto the floor by the slap, facing downward. His face was planted into the ground instantly, no match for Han Zio at all. This mechanical suit did not have that many weapons. It was used specifically for hand-to-hand combat. Its armor was a horrifying amount of more than 30,000 points. Furthermore, the Void Dragon Bone granted the mechanical suit extra abilities. Seeing this, the other mercenaries stopped moving forward and said with a bitter smile, "We admit our loss. The difference in strength was too vast." They had battled through all the obstacles and finally gotten close, only to realize that Han Zhao himself was stronger than all his machinery. It was a completely impossible battle to win. There were around 100 of them, so originally they had thought that Han Zhao was outnumbered, but now they felt that they were the ones that were outnumbered. Han Zhao had yet to finish testing all his weapons, so there was still a huge cannon that he did not deploy. He wanted to continue, but seeing that the mercenaries had given up, he could only collect all his machinery. Disappointed, Han Zhao said a few words, mostly saying that they had passed his test and that their ability was not bad. Then he got rid of the Sunals and told them to start doing their missions. Han Zhao returned to the stronghold alone and went to the machinery modification room. He called the 3 Volga brothers. These 3 looked very similar, and they were hard to differentiate. Usually, the oldest brother would speak for the 3 of them. "Captain, what is the reason for calling us? What kind of spells do you guys know?" Han Zhao looked at the oldest Volga brother. "I'm a specialized mage in water spells," the oldest Volga said. "My second youngest brother is good at shape manipulation spells and enhancing auras. My youngest brother is a psychic. I called you here to enchant some weapons." He pointed at the machinery on the table as he spoke. The 3 of them had no objections to the captain's request, but their faces turned bitter when they turned and saw the machinery. So many machineries. The workload was way too large. I wrote the specific requirements on paper and it's on the table. You can do it slowly when you don't have missions. Han Zhao waved and walked out with big steps, leaving the 3 of them there looking at each other. The youngest Volga brother was very happy. He was not a mage, so it had nothing to do with him. He looked at the 2 older brothers with glee in his eyes and left joyfully. The other 2 looked at his cheerful departing figure and almost wanted to gift him a magic beam. Theoretically, most inanimate objects could be enchanted, including machinery of course. Enchanting was also a career that the mage class players had by default. In his previous life, most of the mages provided enchanting services to earn some extra money. In the ancient city ruins of the South Territory on planet Dawn, an alliance of various tribes had gathered. 3,000 Blue Shield Knights of the Vane Kingdom, 5,000 savage berserkers of the Howling Barbarians tribe, 1,000 alchemist bombardiers of the Earth tribe, 500 beast riders of the Child of Voices, and the mixed army of the Southland City and the Principality. Rizar and his believers are currently hiding under the ruins, preparing the ceremony of polluting the origin water. We have about 2.5 hours time. There's about 800 high-level Mojo puppet colossuses, which he spent 20 years building, sleeping in the ruins. He's installed complex magic arrays, so the path toward the ceremony altar will only open if all the Mojo puppets are destroyed. This means that we have to break through the lockdown of the Mojo puppets in a short time, find their position, and stop the ceremony. If not, the origin water of more than half of the Southland Territory will lose its vitality, and hundreds of thousands of people will die. The Kingdom Tribune mages have contacted the Ascenders from the higher worlds. The Ascenders have hired warriors from the higher worlds who will help us in combat. Rex then looked at the corner of the tent. A human in a red battle suit was sitting there, looking completely different from the others who were wearing chain armor. He stood up and said, "I'm the Red Horn Mercenary Group's captain, Lin Ji. The people of your race have paid the gratuity, so we will help you to our best ability." "Captain Lin Ji, are you confident?" Rex asked. Lin Ji shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "Frankly, the situation here is much worse than the information that we received when we accepted the mission suggested. Our strength is limited, and we aren't able to deal with missions of this level. The details have already been reported to the employer, and the second batch of external reinforcements is on the way. If we're lucky, they should be able to reach us within 2 hours. Frowning, Rex's face turned grave, and he said, "Time is too scarce. Are the reinforcements dependable?" "Don't worry, the mercenary group in the second batch of reinforcements is much stronger than us. As long as they arrive in time, solving the incident here will be a piece of cake. Their stronghold happened to be in this star system. If not for that, they would not even have bothered to take on small incidents like this." "I hope so." Rex was worried, but Lin Ji was confident. Planet Dawn was located in the Garten star system, Godera's territory. This planet was very far from the fixed star, so it was at dawn even in the day, hence its name. Theoretically, this should have been a frozen planet that was unable to birth lifeforms. Its vitality came from the river running through the surface and underground. The natural water on planet Dawn contained magic energy. It had warmth in it that diminished the coldness of the entire planet, and gave birth to plants and lives. It was called origin water by the inhabitants of planet Dawn. The origin water was the most important resource on the entire planet. At the same time, at a strangely shaped huge altar inside a man-made space under the ancient city ruins, countless believers in black were praying softly, sending magic into the magic array on the altar. In the heart of the altar was an old Vanerian in a gorgeous bright red robe, Rizar. A golden-framed mirror was floating beside him. It possessed the spell, and the image in the mirror was a reflection of the war above him from an aerial view. These fools, they fell for your scheme as expected. These magic colossuses are used to fight with them specifically. Our magic array is hidden under the field. Blood from above is directed into this place. The ceremony can only be activated with enough blood as its fuel. Haha, your idea of tying the magic array with the magic colossuses is really brilliant, leaving them with no choice but to fight head-on with the magic colossuses, a superior believer under the altar said in a flattering tone. Rizar nodded and asked coldly, how much more blood is needed? The fuel to activate the altar will be enough in 1 hour if they continue fighting. You will become the Lord of Magic, the strongest mage in history, the superior believer said with a fanatical face. Strongest? Rizar looked at him pitifully. He shook his head and mumbled, 20 years of preparation, I'm finally close to success. I've been stuck at this stage for so many years, and this is the limit of my talent. As long as I cross this step, I will be able to go to the higher world. The battle on the surface lasted almost an hour. In order to save time, the army almost completely gave up its defenses and attacked crazily. Half of the magic colossuses were destroyed, and all the polluters were dead. However, the warriors had suffered heavy losses as well. Blood turned into a river. Bang! An alloy airdrop cabin fell down to the ground right beside this magic colossus, and the impact blew both the magic colossus and Rex away. Then there were more sounds of these cabins falling onto the ground. Many airdrop cabins fell onto the ground nearby. At this time, that magic colossus charged toward this human man, and its axe slashed down. Rex subconsciously wanted to yell and remind him, but what happened next made him swallow his words. This man raised his hand and easily grabbed the axe that was more than enough to slash a ravening beast open. The impact from the axe only made his wrist sink a negligible amount of distance. He raised his eyebrows and said, Tisk, the way this planet welcomes its guest is really passionate. We came right on time. Stop standing there, time to do the job. Linji, who was in the middle of a fight, looked over and heaved a sigh of relief. They're finally here, the Black Star mercenary group. Originally, most large mercenary groups wanted to build a relationship with him because of his floating dragon background. But they slowly acknowledged and respected Black Star's abilities. When they needed external reinforcements in the Colton Star cluster, Hanzio was almost always among their first choice. When a mercenary group's credibility rating reached a certain level, they would receive additional benefits. They would be listed among groups that had good credibility ratings in the area, and automatically send some emergency hires in the area exclusively to Black Star. That was how they had become the reinforcements for Planet Dawn. Actually, he had just completed a guarding request 2 days ago. As per their habit, they were supposed to rest for some time in Jubilee Hub. However, he saw it was an emergency event from Planet Dawn, so he decided to cancel the holiday and come to their aid. This planet was one of the infection targets in the mission that was yet to be activated. Hence, he came to take a look. After the Alliance army had a brief moment to rest and regroup, they hastily looked for the entrance in the ruins. They were able to find the entrance to the underground altar very quickly. At the underground altar in the deepest area of the underground city, the scene of the army entering appeared on the magical mirror. The hundreds of believers' face changed instantly. SHT, why is another group of warriors from the higher world here? Our plan is ruined. The magic colossuses did not kill enough people. The blood is not enough to activate the altar. We're done for. He stared at Hanzio and the others in the mirror, and a sense of envy, yearn, and jealousy appeared in his eyes. These people all came from the higher world. Soon, very soon, I will become someone of the higher world, too. Rizar looked down at the panicking believers. This was a sect that he had spent dozens of years building. A hint of cruelty appeared on his face. Lend your flesh to me. A bright red light suddenly burst out from his magic staff. The pillars on the altar were glowing in blood red. A complex glowing magic array appeared on the floor. This time, all noise disappeared. The believers' eyes suddenly swelled, and their faces turned blue-black as if they were suffocating. He felt a strong magic power inside his body, crushing that limit in his body. A new power was born. His eyes widened, and tears rolled down his face. Success. I succeeded. Although the ceremony had stopped not long after it stopped, the magic that he had absorbed had already helped him break through that limit. He had finally reached the standard that Godera had set. He could head toward the higher world as he had been yearning for. The increase in power made Rizar have a false sense of confidence, like he could defeat everyone with just a wave of his hands. Hanzio raised his eyebrows. Yo, broke through to grade B, but the next second, the Void Dragon mechanical suit covered his body. Hanzio moved beside Rizar as if teleporting. He gripped his head and smashed it heavily into the ground. Bang! Before Rizar could react, his head had already struck the ground. His staff slipped out of his hand and rolled far away. The power that he had just gained did not have any effect at all. The feeling of being strong only lasted a few seconds before it was shattered instantly. Does it make a difference? Rizar woke up slowly, still dizzy. He realized that he was tied up by magic suppressing chains, and the magic in his body was forcibly restrained and could not be used. Subconsciously, he wanted to struggle and resist. Then he saw Hanzio, who stood at the side, and he immediately stopped his actions. As long as Hanzio was there, resisting would just give him more shame and torture. However, he could not hold back his rage. He stared at Hanzio and clenched his teeth tightly. If not for this external help from the higher world, he would have already succeeded. Why did you stop me? This obviously has nothing to do with you. Hanzio shrugged and said, there's no why, it's all a job. I have dealt with dozens of outlaws like you. Thieves have no rights to complain about the police. If you want to blame something, blame it on your luck being bad and meeting us in your act. What's your motive? I just don't want to be trapped in a behind planet forever. Can you understand the feeling of surprise and my dreams shattering when I knew that we were just one of the countless races in the universe? I want to see the real world. Rizar pulled the chains, making clanking sounds. Since my ceremony has failed, you have no need to deal with me anymore. Aren't you mercenaries? They can hire you against me, so I can hire you too. Please take me away from Planet Dawn. I can offer all of my wealth as the reward. If you don't need that, I can work for you too. Rizar was still making his last struggle. The soldiers at the side heard this and could not help but get nervous. They were afraid that the higher world mercenaries would change sides. Hanzio, however, did not hesitate at all to reject the new mission that popped up on his interface. He said coldly, sorry, but Black Star Mercenary Group keeps its words. Furthermore, even if you have quite a good reason, it cannot be an excuse for you to harm the planet. Rizar was furious and frustrated. He kept silent and let the soldiers pull him by his chains. Captain Black Star, Captain Lin Ji, on behalf of the Vane Kingdom, I invite you heroes to be guests at the palace. The king wants to thank you personally. Do you have the time? Sure, we will go with you then. I can take a look at Planet Dawn on the way. Hanzio nodded. Of course, this was an excuse. His main goal was to get the intel regarding signs of the mutation disaster. And getting intel from the higher-ups of the kingdom was the most convenient way. In the dark, silent night, inside a single-person tent, Hanzio opened the galactic communicator and looked at the mercenary hiring panel. As he was thinking, Hanzio's senses felt a tiny abnormality. Hanzio's eyes swayed, and he stood up and walked out of the tent. It was silent. He looked around and was stunned for a second. The prison car in the middle of the camp was gone. Rizar was nowhere to be found, and the guards were missing too. Escaped. He did not want any accidents to happen on the mission, so he equipped his mechanical suit and scanned with its radar. Then he discovered that Rizar's signal was in a small forest just outside the camp. The other soldiers are all asleep. What are they taking Rizar to the bush at night for? Holy, can it be? Hanzio took a deep breath in. That is an old man. They have a really unique taste. Hanzio walked into the forest on tiptoes, terrified, ready to turn away and run anytime he saw something dirty. I will ask you one last time, where did you get the ceremony from? I found a stone tablet under the ancient ruins. On it was the incomplete method of carrying out the ceremony. I changed the spell into using blood as the energy source. How many more times do you want me to say it? Who else knows about this spell? No one. After I memorized the spell, I destroyed the tablet. Do you think I would tell others such a dangerous spell? It's only safe in my hands. Rizar's face was full of impatience as he replied to the knight. This knight rubbed his hands, and he said with a tone of suppressed excitement, how about this? Let's make a deal. You tell us the method to carrying out the ceremony, and I will let you live. Frankly, I am quite interested in the higher world as well. Rizar's eyes brightened like he had caught the last straw to save his life. Ha ha ha, there is always a way out. Rizar pondered, and a sense of derision appeared on his face. He felt that after he told them of the method, these people would definitely kill him. He secretly raised his alert and asked, how do I know you don't just want to trick me out of my spell? We are the guards on duty during this time, the knight before him said. If you die, it will easily be traced back to us. Hearing the footsteps, the people immediately turned around. When they saw who it was, they were all shocked. Rizar's face changed immediately. You again. If their conversation had been overheard, his tinder of hope would be extinguished once again. Han Zhao looked around and noticed that although these knights were surprised, they did not panic like their private deal had been found out. What's going on? Han Zhao decided to speak first. Yo, you heard. A knight asked carefully. Guess. Han Zhao's eyes landed on his steel sword. Kill him. That knight yelled as he turned around and stabbed his sword at Rizar's chest, blood splashing all over. Han Zhao's expression was strange. He had thought that these knights were going to fight him, but what was happening now? Rizar's eyes widened. Can anyone explain this? Han Zhao glanced at the knights. They closed their mouths and did not say anything. Han Zhao turned to look at the deeper side of the forest and said to the darkness, "The one hiding? They're not speaking, so you will explain it to me." The sound of footsteps approaching appeared in the forest. Having hidden for a long time at the side, Rex walked out with a serious face. He knew that he could not hide anymore as soon as Han Zhao appeared. Rex took a deep breath and said slowly, "These knights are my supporters. I arranged for them to be on duty at the same time. Bringing Rizar here was to kill him." Han Zhao raised his eyebrows and said, "Isn't he already captured? Why bother killing him secretly? Just kill him in broad daylight." Rex shook his head and said, "The king wanted me to capture him alive, interrogate him openly, and lock him in a cell. Captain Blackstar, you're not someone from our kingdom, so I shall tell you bluntly. For criminals at the level of ascenders like Rizar, the higher-ups of the kingdom will very likely give them to the Godaran emissary in exchange for something. This way, Rizar will still be alive, and his dream of going to the higher world will become true as well. When it comes to this kind of person that almost killed 1,000,000 of others for his own sake, I don't even want to give him the slightest chance of staying alive. Also, Rizar knows the ceremony to absorb the origin water. Maybe someone in the kingdom is interested and might force him to share the ceremony spell in exchange for not killing him. Then this horrifying spell might be leaked out. If that happens, something like this will happen again. Therefore, even if this means disobeying orders from the king, I can't let him reach the kingdom city alive." Han Zhao pointed at Rizar and said, "Since you don't want him to go back alive, how about giving him to me? It's easier for you this way." "What do you want him for?" Rex frowned. "That's not for you to know. Anyway, I will take him into the galaxy, the higher world, far away from you, and never let him come back here." Rizar heard this and was immediately surprised. Going to the higher world was something that he had dreamed every day. He was already in a hopeless situation, but now he felt like he had found hope again. However, when he looked up, he saw Han Zhao smiling at him with unknown meanings in his eyes. That look was almost wicked and giving out a cold aura. Rizar felt a chill, and the excitement immediately dissipated. His intuition suddenly told him that this was probably not good news. Boom! The explosion awakened the night. The Blue Shield Knights in the camp walked out of their tents and looked at the forest not far away with suspicion. Thick smoke was rising inside the forest. They turned around and were shocked to realize that Rizar was missing. "The prisoner has escaped," someone shouted. The knights hastily picked up their shields and steel swords and hurried to the scene of the explosion. As they entered the forest, they saw Han Zhao standing before a huge pit. Inside was a corpse that was as burnt as charcoal, unidentifiable. "Your prisoner almost escaped, and I caught him." Han Zhao shrugged and said, "As you can see, I accidentally played too much. Rizar is dead." The knights were shocked. Rex's expression changed. He shook his head and said, "The king wants him alive. He should not have died, but sadly, he decided to die." As the commander, he concluded this matter with just a few words. He strictly punished a few guards on duty, then ordered the knights under his command to go back to sleep. The people saw this and did not bother too much about it. Since Rizar had died, there was no need to escort him anymore, and they would not have to be nervous on their way back anymore. Many people heaved a sigh of relief and felt content. Most people had the same thought as Rex and wanted Rizar dead. The hometown of some knights was the Southland territory, and Rizar had almost killed their family. If not for the higher world warriors, the outcome would have been unimaginable. Despite Rizar's failure, they could not take it as if nothing had happened. A few old soldiers who had followed Rex a long time realized something and gave Rex a meaningful look. They knew their commander well. This escape was most likely planned and acted out for the sake of the king and those royalties who wanted to capture Rizar alive. Killing Rizar was to prevent others with vicious intentions from benefiting from him and causing more harm. Rex had a very good reputation among the army and was loved. Furthermore, the soldiers did not have very good impressions of the royals. Without any discussion, they all took it as they knew nothing. In the dark night, he came to the back of a small hill. Rizar had been thrown there, and Hurlus was guarding him with his arms crossed. In the end, Rex had given Rizar up. Although he really wanted to kill Rizar, He did not have much of a choice with Han Zio, so he could only believe Han Zio's words. How is he? Han Zio asked. The wound on his chest is bandaged, so he won't die, Hurlus replied. Black Star, are you actually recruiting this mage? He's not the good kind at all. Do I look like I'm that short of people? Han Zio patted his back and said, don't forget, I promised to bring hundreds of thousands of supers to solve Sunal's problems. I'm not interested in him. Alright then, I will listen to you and stay to guard him. If he wants to run, I'll slash him. Hurlus trusted Han Zio a lot. He knew that his fate was bonded with Han Zio. Han Zio took out a small suction cup-shaped device, in the middle of which were many tiny needles. He pressed it on Rizar's arm where his veins were closer to the surface. The needles penetrate into his veins, slowly sucked his blood, and gradually released a dim magic light. Rizar suddenly felt he was losing the magic power in his body. Terrified, he looked at the device on his arm. This thing was sucking his magic. No. He struggled with all his might, but his strength was disappearing very quickly. Magic was disappearing continuously. Where's my power? Give me back my power. He had gained the power of an ascender for less than half a day, and before he could feel that power fully, he had already lost it. Han Zio took out 3 empty tubes and poured the blood extracted by the device inside. You have received X3. He drank 1 tube straight away. The sweet and metallic taste filled his mouth. The warm blood flowed down his throat, and it was very spicy on the nose. Then, a warmth that belonged to magic power rippled in his body. You have received. Character Summon Card, Rizar. Temporarily grants power beyond oneself. Plus 20% all attributes. Duration, 15 minutes. Usage, 0 divided by 1. I recall that you begged me to bring you to the higher world. Now, I promise you I will. Han Zio's smile was like a demon's in Rizar's eyes. This old guy shivered in terror. Going to the higher world like this was the exact opposite of how he had thought it would be. A strong sense of regret filled his heart and climbed into his eyes. Yo, you're a demon. Rizar wanted to roar but could only speak these words softly. When night came, it was bright in the palace. Han Zio and the others accepted the invitation, changed into formal clothes given by the steward, and attended the dinner banquet. Arashia's digestive system was very strong, and all her food would be decomposed into energy without any waste, so she did not need to excrete. However, a very weird accident happened. Her Energize Esper power could only be used on herself and not on anything external. Before her food was completely digested and turned into energy, the leftovers in her stomach that had yet to be digested would drop out in a splashing way. At that time, they were just about to start a battle with some enemies, and this scene shocked both sides. The food pulp had splashed out below the ball of energy that Arashia turned into, and the areas had fallen into a deep, awkward silence. Ever since then, Arashia would always count the dates before consuming any food, calculating whether she would need to use her powers before her food was digested. Captain Black Star, what did you want to talk to me about? Han Zio lowered his voice and said, I have a special kind of intuition ability. When I arrived on this planet, I felt that there was some kind of virus from space that's here on planet Dawn. King Gala was shocked. He sat up straight and said, are you saying that our planet is infected by some kind of illness? No, this is just a feeling. The details still require some research on if there were any similar symptoms appearing on a large scale. Only then can the virus be confirmed to exist. King Gala took it very seriously and ordered the steward to arrange the intel of all the territories. King Gala took a look, shook his head, and said, it's all usual infectious diseases. There don't seem to be any new symptoms in a large scale. Han Zio raised his eyebrow and said, it might not be falling sick. It can also be some kind of unusual behavior, such as sleeping more than usual. King Gala froze for a moment. Who would check on the sleeping quality of others out of nowhere? Everyone slept with their doors closed, and no one would talk about how their sleep was the previous night with every person that they met. There was no record of the sleeping quality of the people. King Gala suddenly thought of something. This year's mineral production from the territories is 16% less than last year, but the mines did not dry out, and the number of miners is more than last year. The factor that could have affected the production rate can only be the duration of work. Maybe it has something to do with this. Maybe. Han Zio gave King Gala another look. This king seemed quite capable as he was able to notice a hidden connection between matters that did not seem to have any relation. The next day, Han Zio kindly rejected King Gala's invitation and left King City. He called the spaceship of a nearby partner out in the wild, picked up Hurlus and Rizar, and headed back to Jubilee Hub. This was a small traveling spaceship, so there were no other passengers. Tyrell had booked the entire spaceship specifically to transport supplies for Floating Dragon. There were few people on the ship. Other than 10 or so crew members and mercenary group members, there were only around 10 of Tyrell Group's employees. Decker was their boss. Han Zio had met him before. They did not communicate much, but he did notice that Decker brought a girl onto the ship this time. "Are you Black Star?" She tilted her head and looked at Han Zio curiously. Han Zio sized her up. This was a space-human teenage girl, rather young, about 15 to 16 years old, and her head only reached Han Zio's chest. "Uncle Decker always tells me stories. He's talked about you before." The teenage girl's eyes moved up and down on Han Zio's body, sizing him up. Decker coughed and said, "This is one of my friend's daughters. Her family. Let me take care of her temporarily. She wanted to follow me no matter what, so I brought her onto the ship." "What's your name?" "Sylvia." "Quite a nice name. What's your home planet?" Sylvia curled her lips. "Are you doing an identity check, Uncle?" "Uncle?" Han Zio was speechless. He was clearly young and handsome. What nonsense was she talking about? Sylvia glanced at Han Zio sideways, changed the topic, and said in disdain, "I heard you mercenaries have no morals and fight for whichever side pays higher. I really want to know, is the money earned from selling your souls not hot to hold?" Han Zio raised his eyebrows. Before he spoke, Decker pulled Sylvia back in terror, scolded her, and hastily apologized to Han Zio. "She doesn't understand many things. Please don't take it to heart. It's all right, understandable." Han Zio waved his hands. Words had basically zero impact on him, so of course, he did not care. This small girl has quite some guts. She knows we are a bunch of brutes, yet he still dares to question me right in my face. Quite brave. And not a small girl. Sylvia was a little angry and pushed her chest up. Not small indeed, but still needs development. One-hit dog's eyes moved down, and a dirty smile appeared on his face. Suddenly, he realized that Han Zio was looking at him without saying anything. He immediately kept his eyes to himself, wiped off his smile, and sat up straight. They fastened their seatbelt, and the spaceship entered jumping mode very quickly. Sylvia, this name sounds kind of familiar. He did not want to give up even the slightest doubt. He returned to his room and pondered for more than 10 minutes. Finally, he found someone in his memories who had this name. Sylvia. Han Zio froze for a second. He did not expect the teenage girl that he had met coincidentally to be a known character. Furthermore, in the storyline of his previous life, Sylvia was very well known and was especially popular among the players. Sylvia was still a young girl now. Han Zio recalled her look in his previous life after growing up. Long hair, valiant and fearless, wearing light mechanical armor and a cape, just like a knight. Sylvia's father was chased by a certain mercenary group and died. She was still young back then, so she took the path of revenge. She moved from forces to forces, learned mechanic class knowledges, and became a galactic pirate chasing after that mercenary group. Sylvia was the arch-enemy of the Mercenary Alliance. Players back then took part in the Mercenary Alliance event. In their eyes, Sylvia was a renowned villain boss of the opposite party. Many players received missions to chase and kill Sylvia, but they all failed. Sylvia was too strong. During the times of opposing the Mercenary Alliance, Sylvia often appeared in the eyes of the players. Then, through what looked like an accident, she discovered that her father was the bad guy and knew that her father deserved his death. She then disappeared for a period of time. When she reappeared, she was not a galactic pirate anymore. She became a freedom fighter of Shattered Star Ring, helping the people who were victims of harm, dealing with some criminals, and being responsible for quite a number of famous events. Why am I thinking of this? Didn't expect to meet a future celebrity. Han Zio stroked his chin. For some reason, he felt somewhat strange, like he had missed some important information. Han Zio walked out of the machinery modification room and came to the dining hall. This was the usual dining area, so many people were eating there. Han Zio sat down, and the bartender passed him a new cup. Hurles laughed, lifted the liquor bottle, and poured him a cup. Han Zio shook his head and lifted up the cup. Just as he was going to drink it, his movement suddenly stopped, and an unknown alert appeared in his heart. Frowning slightly, he looked at the object introduction on his interface. Effects unknown. Han Zio held the bartender's collar, pressed the panicking bartender on the bar table, and said coldly without an expression, "You added poison." Hurles was shocked. "Captain, this is..." Han Zio pointed at his cup and said, "Someone added something inside, probably poison." "Impossible, I brought the liquor. Why am I fine after drinking it? Or have I been poisoned too?" Hurles was shocked. He hurriedly touched his tongue and throat, but there was no sign of the numbness from being poisoned. "There is no problem with the liquor, it's the cup." The item information of the liquor bottle was normal, only his cup had something added into it. Han Zio shook his head. He wrote a new mission and threw it to the players. You have triggered mission. Mission introduction. Someone seems to have attempted to poison your captain. Are you willing to help him to test the effect of the poison? Mission requirements, drink. Reward, Black Star, Han Zio favorability +8, 150,000 experience. Remarks, possible death. The mercenary group players received the notification on their interface. Their eyes sparkled, for this was the first time that they had seen such an easy mission that could increase Han Zio's favorability and receive experience. Dying once was nothing. Just as they were about to snatch the cup, a shadow flew past everyone. One-hit dog snatched the cup extremely quickly and gulped it down without saying a word. How are you able to run this fast? Second Prince was shocked. I'm a dexterity-focused pugilist, yet I could not even catch up to you. How did you do it? One-hit dog glanced at everyone with pride. Before he could speak, his face suddenly changed, and the veins under his skin expanded and turned black, covering his entire face. He opened his mouth but could not say a word. The other players moved back as they saw this, leaving no one within a 3-meter radius from Bun-Hit Dog. Bun-Hit Dog froze in place for a few seconds. Then blood sprayed out from his every orifice. He collapsed onto the ground and died on the spot. Tisk tisk, truly a man of the wind. He even died quickly, Frenzied Sword said. He's dead just like that. The company employees and the crews were all dumbfounded. A mercenary died right on the spot, yet his friends had no reaction at all. What mercenary group is this? They're so cold-blooded, so horrifying. Plus, these mercenaries are way too loyal to Black Star. Black Star had yet to even speak and they were already rushing to drink the poisoned alcohol, testing the poison with their body. This does not feel like a mercenary group at all but a fanatical cult. However, the next moment, Bun-Hit Dog's corpse turned into white light and disappeared. Then the sound of trotting footsteps appeared outside the door almost immediately after. Bun-Hit Dog had run over from the revive point. Yo, you. Decker stammered in shock. Han Zio looked at him. After working together so many times, I'm surprised that you don't know that we have the nickname Immortal Mercenary Group. I see, I don't know much about the mercenary industry. Decker smiled bitterly. No wonder the mercenaries were so calm, they were all immortals. Black Star's name was widely known, but his details were only known within the industry. The other industries did not know much about it. This means that the person who added the poison has limited information of me. But the fact that the culprit could poison me on this trip means that they know my location, or at least know that this ship is transporting supplies for Floating Dragon and that I would definitely appear here. This ship is only so big, and the culprit is definitely hidden among them. Plus, even the title of Immortal Mercenary Group did not scare the culprit away, so there can only be two possibilities. Either they know that I'm not immortal or an act of revenge. It wasn't me. I don't know anything about this. I just took an empty cup from the drawer. Han Zio opened the bar drawer. There were many empty cups inside. There are so many glasses, and the only one with poison is the one you gave me. How can you explain that? I don't know. That glass was at the most outside. I really just took it randomly. The bartender almost urinated out of horror. Hurlis suddenly was covered in cold sweat. If the bartender took the wrong cup, wouldn't that have been the end of me? Your body is strong. The poison wouldn't have killed you, Han Zio replied. The spaceship's captain hurried to the scene, stepped out of the crowd, and said with sorrow on his face, I'm the captain of Rainbow Conch. I am extremely sorry that something like this happened in my ship. I will provide my full cooperation to you with finding the culprit. Everyone on the ship was gathered here, even Sylvia. She hid at the edge of the crowd and showed half of her face, sizing him up. His eyes suddenly narrowed. Wait a minute, Sylvia. With a flash of insight, Han Zio finally realized where the strange feeling came from. He looked at Decker and said, Sylvia is your friend's daughter, is she? Decker nodded and said with a confused face, yes, what's wrong with that? Han Zio squinted his eyes. Her family only has her father, and if I remember correctly, that person is not a nobody. Decker's expression froze. His eyes clearly expressed his shock and disbelief. Why do you know who Sylvia is? Although Han Zio did not know exactly who Sylvia's father was, he remembered that her father was a villain in the background introduction, and that was enough. Sylvia stared at Han Zio. Her tone was complex and mixed with astonishment. You know me. She could not figure out how it was possible for Han Zio to recognize who she was despite him meeting her for the first time. Black Star, my father was sent to jail by you. You dishonorable mercenaries only fight for money, and for that, you help those tyrants suppress the people who are suffering. My father could have saved everyone, but he couldn't because of your mercenaries. Since she was already exposed, she did not act like a teenage girl anymore. The players exchanged looks confusingly. When did we do something like that? Maple Moon could not help but ask, little girl, what's your father's name? Langley, how can you forget his name? Sylvia was emotional. Han Zhao opened the mercenary group panel and glanced through it. There really was this name in the mission resume. It was a partnership mission with the Purple Gold Army to eradicate the stronghold of a certain rebel army. The leader of the rebels was called Langley, and as it turned out, that guy was Sylvia's father. Han Zhao was speechless. He had become the certain mercenary group that imprisoned Sylvia's father in her character background. What could he say? This was the result of the butterfly effect once again. It fell from the sky. Not only you but Purple Gold Army too. This will not be the last time. I will hunt you people to the depths of hell. Sylvia yelled. Bang! As soon as she finished her sentence, the sound of a smoke grenade exploding came from behind them. At the same time, the announcement from the spaceship system echoed in the entire spaceship. Auto navigation altered. Current destination, the closest fixed star. Heating up jumping engine. Estimated time till arrival, 13 minutes and 48 seconds. The entire ship has entered lockdown mode. All gates are locked. Repeat, all gates are locked. Boom. The gate in the main control room closed with a loud band, together with all the doors along the corridor and paths in the spaceship. The captain had prepared long ago. He dashed out extremely quickly before the alloy door on the other side of the main control room closed. Hurles could not capture the captain in time, and he punched the metal door, leaving a shallow dent. The captain was with an enemy. This was not just an assassination. This ship itself was a complete trap for them. The reason that Sylvia knew their whereabouts was most likely because of how well known they were. They actually plotted against us and planned to send us into a fixed star and burn us to a crisp. Not a bad idea. Han Zhao smiled. He did not panic at all. He was extremely familiar with this kind of plan. He had fought the Germinal organization this way back then. What do we do now? Hurles looked at him. Han Zhao walked in front of the main control panel, pressed on the screen, and opened the spaceship system interface. He stretched his fingers, shook his head, and laughed. I'm a mechanic. You guys blast the alloy gate open. Some of you go to the central computer room and insert this chip, and the rest of you go to capture Sylvia and her allies. Han Zhao guessed that Sylvia would be going to the escape cabin as soon as possible and escape before the spaceship entered the jump state, at the same time releasing all the emergency escape ships and trap them in the spaceship. However, he was a mechanic and could seize the spaceship's authorization. This was the flaw in Sylvia's plan. Han Zhao's movements did not stop. He said while hacking, breaking through this system will take about 5 minutes, but the spaceship will enter the jumping state in 2 minutes. Sylvia will board the escape ship before this. Aracia, capture her. Upon hearing Han Zhao's words, Aracia turned into energy form and left through the wall. Metal walls were meaningless to her. Only energy barriers could stop her from going through the wall. With the sound of air streams, the other escape ships were released, leaving only 2 behind. Just as the 2 of them was about to walk in, a tint of golden light appeared behind them. Aracia passed through the wall and made it just in time. Quickly, go. Sylvia clenched her teeth. She was about to enter the escape ship, then suddenly, the captain pushed her from her back and threw her toward Aracia. In times of danger, he could not be bothered about the fact that Sylvia was his employee. He just wanted to stall time. In midair, Sylvia turned around in disbelief. She did not expect the sudden betrayal of the captain. An energy impact ring expanded, sending Sylvia flying before she even hit Aracia. She bumped into the wall and fell down on the side. Her expression was distorted from the pain. Aracia straightened her arm. Her forearm turned into a beam of gold energy and swept at the 2 escape ships like a whip, melting through their shell and leaving a consistent red cut. It was clear that they could not be used anymore. The captain's face changed completely. After getting Sylvia under control, he easily gained the captain's authorization. The entire spaceship was under his control now. He canceled the navigation toward the fixed star, and the danger was diffused. All the people on the ship were gathered in the guest hall. Around them were mercenaries who aimed their firearms at them. In the middle were Sylvia, Decker, and the captain, who were bound tightly. Han Zhao sat on the sofa, placed his elbows on his knees, and leaned slightly forward, slowly scanning the 3 of them. His aura was like a crouching tiger, very pressurizing. The crew and the company employees did not even dare breathe loudly, despite them not being the ones who were being interrogated. Decker hastily explained the situation. A few days ago, the Tyrol group had prepared the supplies for floating Dragon Island and confirmed to let him take care of the handover. After that, Sylvia had found him and forced him to cooperate. You know about our whereabouts, so there's definitely an organization that provided you help. You're just a small girl and won't have such a vast intel network. Han Zio was expressionless. Plus, you bribed the captain to take the risk and fight a group of mercenaries, so you definitely depended on the power of that organization. Sylvia stared at Han Zio with a determined face like she had decided not to say anything no matter what. She was not willing to lower her head in front of her enemy. Bang! The sound of gunshots suddenly appeared. Smoke came out from the muzzle. Droplets of blood splashed onto Sylvia's pretty face. Her whole body shivered, and she turned her head and looked over. The captain's head had a penetrating hole of blood in it. The stunned expression was fixed on his face. He collapsed slowly, and the pool of blood expanded gradually. The captain had thought that Han Zio was going to interrogate him and was still troubled by what he should say in order to stay alive. But Han Zio was completely uninterested in him and gave him a bullet straight away. The widened eyes were filled with regret. The corpse suddenly changed shape into another man. This was the shapeshifting Esper ability, especially suitable for infiltration. Herless eyes sparkled. I guessed correctly. There is indeed a shapeshifting Esper. Seeing this, Han Zio could now guess roughly what had happened. Looks like the original captain died long ago and was replaced by this shapeshifting Esper. He's a killer you hired, and he should be the one that poisoned the cup as well. Sylvia bit her lower lip heavily. She turned her head to not look at the corpse. Despite her trying her best to stay strong, she could not stop herself from shivering or the tiny tears appearing in her eyes. She only looked like a teenage girl in the face of her fear of death. Yo, you might as well kill me too. Sylvia closed her eyes and tried her best to make an unafraid expression. I don't oppose that. The still hot muzzle pressed on Sylvia's white and smooth face. Through the muzzle, Han Zio could obviously feel Sylvia was shivering more and more heavily. Wait a minute. Who tied her up like this? Han Zio had only just realized the superb tying skills used on Sylvia. One-Hit Dog raised his hand immediately like a good student answering a question. He said with a bright smile on his face, I did. Doesn't it look amazing? You're really letting yourself go. Frenzied Sword's mouth twitched. On the side, Herless shook his head and asked, Black Star, what are you planning to do with her? Pack up and prepare to leave. Knock her out and lock her up. Sylvia's tiny face was filled with shock. She looked up and said, Where are you taking me? To see your father, Han Zio said coldly. Sylvia's eyes widened instantly. She could not believe it. Why are you doing this? In the stably moving hovering battle vehicle, Sylvia was feeling complicated. A few days ago, when she failed the assassination, she had thought that she was going to die for sure. But to her disbelief, not only did Han Zio not kill her, he even brought her to see her father. In the rare times that she was awake along the journey, she had been questioning if this was a dream. Without approval from the Alliance, she would never be able to enter the heavily guarded Agalo prison city. She had thought that she would never see her father again. Sylvia could not understand why Han Zio was helping her. To let you know that your hatred is meaningless and how unworthy it is for you to give your life for him. Also, to let your father know about your death. I really want to see his expression when he realizes that his lies killed his own daughter. Killing people and destroying their spirit is my favorite. Han Zio shrugged. He could not be bothered with Sylvia's furious expression and opened up the interface. After he let Sylvia live, a new mission was triggered. Its requirement was to let Sylvia know the so-called truth. Langley had originally been a high-ranked army officer of a nation, almost a warlock that had a land of his own. His life was good, and he was paid handsomely too. However, one day, he suddenly used his influence to provoke the army, recruiting quite a number of people in secret and gathering a group of rebels, looking like they wanted to form a nation on their own. He called it an uprising, but in reality, they were doing immoral things. They built a very firm stronghold and fought with their old superiors for many years. In the end, they were demolished by a group of galactic mercenaries who fell from the sky and penetrated straight into their headquarters. It's you. Why are you here? You're very afraid of me. Han Zio walked to the cage with an expressionless face. Shouldn't you thank me? If it was the other mercenaries that got to you, they wouldn't even have wasted their energy to pick up your corpse. Do you think you would be standing here with your full body like you are right now? Although there was a cage between them, Langley did not feel safe at all. Your daughter Sylvia. I don't know what lies you told her, but she believed whatever bullshit you said and feels that you're a great man and a liberator of the people. She wanted to avenge you and tried to assassinate me. What? Langley's face changed instantly. He pounced at the railings and grabbed onto the heated cage, not caring about the high temperature burning through his hands and the burnt smell that came out of it. His face could almost touch Han Zio's face, filled with anxiety and rage. Wah, what did you do to her? What else? Han Zio let out a sigh and said, Of course I killed her. I shot her from below her jaw through his head, opening a hole at the back of her head. Her brain juice and blood splashed all over the wall. One of my subordinates thought she's quite pretty, so he's planning to skin her face and make it into a specimen for display. Langley almost fainted. His daughter was his only motivation for staying alive. His expression became twisted as rage, regret, heartache, desperation, and hatred flashed past one after another. He growled like a beast approaching its death, and even his fear of Han Zio was completely forgotten. I will kill you. I will definitely kill you. Han Zio looked at the furious Langley calmly, and when his throat became hoarse from the screaming and could only stare at him while breathing heavily, Han Zio said slowly, "Okay, enough jokes. Your daughter is outside the gate. I captured her. I brought her here just to see you." Langley froze and could not react to it. He felt extremely weak from the emotional roller coaster. "You're a smart person. Whether I kill your daughter or not depends on you." Langley's expression changed many times. He lowered his head and kept silent. Langley's eyes were filled with complicated emotions. He said with a hoarse voice, "I will do it. I will tell her everything about me. I was a high-level spy for another force from the start. I was controlled by someone else, and everything I did was to overturn the rules built by the new Phylan Alliance. I will tell her that I have been lying to her. I'm not who she thinks I am. I'm just a despicable traitor, an evil man who destroyed thousands of families for his own benefit. I will destroy the image she has from me and make her feel completely disappointed in me, her father." He turned to walk toward the door and left him with one last reminder. "Anyway, if I do not like the result after the conversation, I will make what I said earlier a reality. This is the one and only chance I'm giving you." He opened the door and left the cell. He immediately saw Sylvia's anxious face. She was staring at him with rage but could not control herself from glancing at the gap of the door. "Go in, you have 10 minutes. Han Zio waved his hand and told Arashia to let Sylvia go. Sylvia rushed into the cell and could not wait to see her father. After closing the door, the warden turned on the surveillance footage and monitored Sylvia's conversation with Langley. Sylvia's change in her expression could be clearly seen. She turned from anxious to stunned, then shocked. Then there was an intense argument. They could even faintly hear Sylvia's out-of-control howling through the thick metal door. In the end, tears gushed out from her eyes. "Completed. You have received 540,000 experience. It's 10 minutes. The warden opened the gate and brought Sylvia out. She looked like she had lost her soul. Her eyes were out of focus, and there were still tear marks on her face. She lost all motivations and was like a walking corpse. Her energy from 10 minutes ago was nowhere to be found. The strong belief that she had been holding on to had collapsed. Only then did she know that the great image of her father in her heart was completely built from lies. She had been lied to for more than 10 years. He was not a great man. Everything he did was despicable, and he deserved every bit of suffering that he had now. Even without the mercenaries interfering, he would have been defeated by the army sooner or later. If not for Black Star, her father would not even have been alive. Her world had collapsed. The warm and bright childhood images in her memories all felt different. Everything was a lie. She felt like her heart was being penetrated by 1,000 bullets. She could not even digest this information in a short time. Through the slowly closing gap of the door, Han Zio looked at Langley for the last time. This rebel leader looked like he was decades older, but his face was very calm. It even had a tint of relief. "Congratulations on growing up." When the flames of rage that burnt her senses away had extinguished, she finally spoke from her heart. "Thank you. You're a good person. And I'm sorry, really sorry." Han Zio raised his eyebrows. "Looks like the heart-modifying operation was a success." This girl was not grumpy anymore. She looked quiet and pretty. Although she was a mess after being captured for so many days, the dust on her face could not cover how pretty she was. "What is your plan?" Sylvia shook her head and looked lost. She did not know where to go after suddenly losing her goal. The galaxy was so wide, yet she had nowhere to go. She said softly, "The universe is so vast. I will probably go look at different places, hoping to find something else I can be determined on." "You want to leave?" Han Zio said with an expressionless face. "Did I allow you to leave?" Sylvia froze. The first rule of mercenaries: all jobs have to be paid. Our help was not free. Furthermore, do you think I'm going to let go of the fact that you tried to assassinate me? I'm in a good mood, so I don't want to kill you, but that doesn't mean you don't have to pay a price. You have to compensate for all my damages." Han Zio crossed his arms and snorted. I have no money now," Sylvia said embarrassedly and fidgeted uncomfortably. She had spent all her savings on this assassination, and those were the funds that Langley had left her. She truly had no money at all. "No money." Han Zio was expressionless. "Then you shall repay me with your body." Sylvia's eyes widened instantly. She blushed and stuttered, you. I'm just a kid. I can't. The players were all shocked and looked at Han Zio in disbelief. Holy, I didn't know you are this kind of black phantom. We're the same type of people. Bunhit Dog recorded it with glee. He was very satisfied. This was way too explosive. Arashia tilted her head and mumbled. This should be the human's action of sending a mating signal. Han Zio almost could not keep a straight face after hearing what Arashia said. He narrowed his eyes and said, "What are you people thinking? I have no interest in your body, I want your freedom." Sylvia immediately breathed a sigh of relief. She looked at Han Zio apprehensively. "Freedom? What do you mean? You have to work for me for 10 years. 10 is too long. Can you make it a little bit shorter?" Sylvia made the hand sign of a little bit as she spoke with a fawning tone. 12 years. No, 10 years is good. Sylvia hastily waved her hands. In these 10 years, you'll be my subordinate. If you want to escape or betray me, I won't give you a second chance. Maybe you can escape, but your father has nowhere to run, Han Zio said coldly. Hearing the threat, Sylvia's face became serious for a second. She wanted to be angry but felt powerless to do so. With her emotions in turmoil, she lowered her head and said softly, "I won't run from my own mistakes. It's just 10 years. I'm still young, so I can afford it. I don't have anywhere else to go now anyway." Since Han Zio had chosen to let Sylvia live, he definitely had to make use of her value and create more profit than killing her would. Sylvia was at least a grade A super at her peak in his previous life, so she was quite a good potential stock. By recruiting her, he could consider it as having another high-quality officer. Furthermore, she was talented in the mechanic class, which suited his abilities. She could become his assistant. Although she needed time to grow, it was worth the investment. Han Zio wanted mature grade A supers too, but tricking someone with a higher grade was way too difficult. There were not that many people who were as easy to trick as Herlis, and even tricking Herlis had not been that easy. According to Sylvia's personality in his previous life, although she was sometimes extreme, she could be considered as normal after giving up on vengeance. Now, this process had been completed many years in advance, which could only be for the better. Furthermore, no matter what, Sylvia was a popular character. This could indirectly increase the popularity of his faction among the players, giving his faction more fame. For the possibility of not being able to control her in the future, the great mechanic Han was not worried at all. Not because he was arrogant, but even the player's growth speed could not match his. If he did not have this tiny bit of confidence, he might as well go back to planet Aquamarine and open a pig farm. The main members of the mercenary group were temporarily the players. When they disappeared, the team that he could command was only the Sunal division. There were too few NPCs. While the players are away, the income of the mercenary group will decrease. I can halt our operations temporarily and make time to recruit more people. When version 2.0 starts, the mutation disaster will break out. I have more than 800,000 ENAs, enough to buy 2 advanced knowledges and complete the class advancement mission. However, I'm now at level 95, and there'll be a promotion mission at level 100, meaning I can only increase my level by 5 after spending all my money. It's best to first get a subclass, reach level 100, and look at the promotion mission. If it can't be completed in a short time, there's no hurry to spend this 800,000, and I can save it as funds. One type of subclass was known as the attribute subclasses, such as this. Every time it leveled up, it would hugely increase an individual attribute, and there were no free attribute points, only potential points. Every level provided an increase of 10 intelligence. The 5 levels that Han Zio had just acquired gave him 50 intelligence. Intelligence was the core attribute of the mechanic class as it was related to machinery affinity. Seeing the promotion mission for level 100 was his main goal. With just one look, Han Zio suddenly started to question life. Your total level has reached 100. Complete the promotion mission to continue leveling up. Kill an enemy that's 1 grade above you. Note, this mission can be completed with a team, but the team members cannot have a higher grade than you. Progress, 0 divided by 1. God damn it. Han Zio clenched his teeth. This promotion mission was not the most difficult one, but due to his grade, its difficulty multiplied many times. He had met a similar promotion mission before when he was level 40. Its requirement was to kill 3 targets that were 5 levels above him. Compared to an entire grade, 5 levels was nothing. I'm now at grade B, doesn't that mean I have to kill a grade A enemy? Han Zio's mouth twitched. If this mission appeared at a lower level, it would only have been a little challenging, but it became multiple times more difficult as the levels increased. The Inhumans had helped Bennett build many sanctuaries, but after that, most Inhumans returned to Sanctuary 3. Wang Yu could not understand why they did this, so he thought it had to be because of his boss. He felt that only Black Phantom would know the reason. However, over the past few days, a huge number of Inhumans had migrated to the sanctuary from all areas without any warning. Huang Yu took this phenomenon very seriously. In the sanctuary meeting room, Huang Yu asked his subordinate, "Have we found the reason?" After he took control of the sanctuary, he had built a group of subordinates himself. The people here were all members of Darknet and worked directly for Bennett. No, we gathered intel from all areas and still have yet to find out why the Inhumans have mass migrated. Currently, the number of Inhumans in Sanctuary 3 has exceeded 800,000, and it's still growing. This is not a good sign. Huang Yu was very troubled. Although most Inhumans are peaceful, there are destructive ones as well. We have already been attacked a few times in the past year. If these Inhumans have an ulterior motive, the damage that 800,000 supers can cause is unimaginable. If not handled properly, the Sanctuary 3 that took 2 years to build might be gone within a night. Of course, there was no way for him to know that the reason that the players had gathered in Sanctuary 3 was because of the speculation that Galaxy Times made from the mission that Han Zio had left behind. Sanctuary 3 would very likely be a key area in the upcoming main storyline, and there was a very high chance for it to be a safe area. Therefore, most players had decided to go to the Sanctuary before the update. This way, not only could they get into the main storyline as soon as the new version arrived, but they would be safer than those in other places. In the dark conference room of a certain Dark Star mothership that was in stealth mode, what stage have the mutation sources that we planted developed to? Based on the time, the larval stage has passed. All mutation sources will enter the pupa stage, and the impacts have already been done. In an estimated time of around 1 year, the mutation source will enter the eruption stage. However, the time predicted is not too accurate. After all, we cannot control the thoughts of the mutation sources. Maintain the observation, Dark Star's leader said. Godera has obtained a mutation source, and we don't know how much headway they have made in their research. The plan needs to be improved. We can't wait for the mutation sources to grow on their own. After the symptoms break out, we need to take action. The details will be discussed again. Anner, how's Ember? The last question was directed at Anner, one of the greatest supers in Dark Star, Ember's teacher. A voice came out of the screen that represented Anner. I made him focus on training his power, and it's going quite well. His strength has increased visibly. There's more than a 20% chance that he can enter Calamity grade. Rogue died in battle, and Vivira is imprisoned in Rainbow Prison, so we have an imminent need to add high-grade combat power. Esper currently has the highest chance to reach grade A, and his Esper power is very strong. Tell him I have high hopes for him. Meeting dismissed. The screens turned black one after another. The dark room returned to dead silence. In Sanctuary 3, ever since an officer breathed in some leaked paralyzing gas and ended up lying in bed for 17 days and 3 hours, Emerald Grass Alchemy Room was deemed a forbidden area. Compared to when Han Zio left, the size of the alchemy room was many times larger with more precise devices. Rows of colorful liquid drugs were placed on the shelves. On the table were transparent glass drawers with different plants inside, all original materials used to make drugs. Sweeping aside her hair, she reached out, opened a drawer, and tore off a petal. As she was going to throw it into the device and use it as the raw material, her movements suddenly stopped. Her power sensed something peeking, but it disappeared after a very short instant, almost like an illusion. Emerald Grass furrowed her brows slightly and looked toward the source of that feeling, but it was the plant that she had taken the petal from. Strange, Emerald Grass mumbled. She pondered and reached out to touch the plant again. The instant her fingers touched the plant, a shiver passed through her Esper power sense like an electric current and stabbed her heart deeply. Quickly pulling her hand away, Emerald Grass took a few steps back and looked at the plant with shock and suspicion. It's not an illusion. There's a very real sense of peaking when I touched it. If not for her power to observe the tiniest changes in plants, she would not have felt the change. Disbelief flashed through her eyes. This plant, is it consciously sensing me? Emerald Grass suddenly thought of something. Her expression changed, and she hastily touched every plant in the room. Most plants did not change, but a quarter of the plants gave her the same feeling. In the enormous alchemy room with not a single other person, she felt like she was surrounded by countless eyes peeking at her silently. A shiver went down her spine uncontrollably. These immobile plants seemed to have grown eyes, looking at and observing her. Something's wrong. Something's very wrong. Emerald Grass murmured. It was late at night. In the internal personnel residential area inside the sanctuary core area, Gila, who was in a black windbreaker, was sitting on the rooftop, looking up at the starry night. Ever since Han Zio left, she would go up to the rooftop occasionally and look up at the stars blankly. In the past year, Gila had not left the sanctuary, and Aurora's health had recovered. Aurora's power was recovering slowly, and she was gradually growing taller. She was not skinny and tiny like before anymore. Her skin became whiter and smoother with a tint of healthy redness. "Are you looking at the moon again, sis?" Aurora looked up. "The moon isn't what I'm looking at." "I know, you must be thinking of Uncle Black Phantom." Aurora smiled and said, "I miss him, too." "Who says I'm missing him?" Gila snorted. "I'm just curious about what the universe looks like." I only occasionally guess what he's doing in space. That guy left a strange disaster prophecy and left us afraid while he's having fun in space." Aurora's eyes moved around and blew a shining kiss, which flew to Gila's cheeks. Gila waved her hands and dissipated the rune of light in front of her. "Stop it." At this moment, Aurora's movement suddenly stopped. Her smile froze on her face, and her body started to shiver uncontrollably. Gila looked down. Her expression immediately dropped. "What's wrong? Are you sick? I'll go find that pharmacist." "No." Aurora opened her mouth with some difficulty, her tiny body still shivering. "My power sensed a very strange creature." "No, that thing can't be considered a creature." "I don't know what is that either." Gila was bewildered. Aurora's power could sense signs of life. She had never seen Aurora get so horrified just because she sensed a certain life form. "What did you sense?" Aurora closed her eyes, her lips pale. "It's very tiny, but very huge too. It's spreading." When her eyes reopened, they were filled with horror. "It's everywhere." In the Black Star Stronghold Hall, all the players of the mercenary group were gathered together. "It's about time." King Admiral looked at the interface. "The version update will start in an hour. Let's log off here. It's safer here." Hao Tian nodded. We will experience a time skip because of the update. There will be unknown changes, so it's best to stay in the stronghold," Frenzied Sword said earnestly. As one of the players from the closed beta, he knew that there would be a time skip after the update. Maple Moon gave a reserved smile, waved goodbye, and disappeared on the spot. They said goodbye to each other and logged off one after another. Soon, all the players in the mercenary group disappeared. They were not the only ones. The same thing happened at the same time on all 13 novice planets. Close to 10 million players disappeared together within a short period of time. In Jubilee Hub, the great mechanic Han was punishing Sylvia in the machinery modification room as he suddenly moved his eyebrows. He opened the interface, and a new notification entered his sight. Version 1.0 update activated. Saving data. Saving completed. Player forums closed. Update duration unknown. Please wait patiently. Han Zio tried to enter the forums, but the link had become gray, and he could not enter it anymore, just like when the closed beta ended. Han Zio closed the books, shook his head, sighed. Sipping on a cup of tea, he calmed his thoughts. "It's finally here." Sigh, tough days. Now that the players have disappeared, the force at my command is only the officers around me and the Sunal warriors. They're only mortal, so I have to act carefully. This year is the preparation stage for version 2.0. In order to have the upper hand, I have many jobs I need to complete. First and foremost is my promotion mission. The chance to complete the promotion mission through regular means was almost negligible. Luckily, he had the radical method, mission completion card. Its effect was to grant the mission reward of a mission and deem the mission as completed with the lowest rating. This was indeed suitable for promotion missions with no mission rating. As long as it was completed, he could be promoted. All your subordinates disappeared and still have yet to return after one day, Hurlis said. Players logged on and off regularly. Han Zio had given a perfunctory explanation, saying that it was the side effect of their immortal body. They won't be around for the time being, so I'm preparing to stop the mercenary group's business, not including your Sunals. And talking about us, then what are we going to do? Han Zio pointed at his own eyes and mysteriously said, "It saw some things again. Remember my promise to you. I can feel it, the time is near." Hurlis' eyes turned bright. "But I need to make some preparations. We will go to the Teralim star cluster next," Han Zio said. That's the closest star cluster to the wormhole cluster at the middle of Shattered Star Ring, and the area with the largest scavenger forces. It's very dangerous. What are we going there for? To find something, Han Zio said with a deep voice. A random reward would only be given after completing a mission with a high rating. Based on this, Han Zio confirmed his action plan. He was going to target the missions that he knew extremely well, and he was going to choose the ones that were not too difficult but definitely would be intricate to complete through normal means. This way, he could make full use of the advantage of knowing the mission well, and obtain a very high rating. With the sound of mechanical parts moving, the compressed orbs expanded into 30 mechanical Black Panther mechanical beasts, and surrounded him. Go. With a snap of his fingers, the mechanical beasts charged forward into the alert area of the enemy's base. Gaps quickly opened up one after another on the ground, exposing 10 or so automatic machine guns that started to fire immediately. Blazing red bullets landed on the mechanical beast's armor, causing fire sparkles and continuous clanks. This extent of damage was nothing worth mentioning to the enhanced mechanical Black Panther beasts. 30 mechanical beasts culled the enemies one after another, cutting through muzzles quickly and swiftly with their sharp blade tails. The sound of gunshots disappeared very soon. All the automatic machine guns became scrap metal. The data stream of the base appeared on the analyzing screen. Hanzao started to hack it while keeping an eye out for enemies to suddenly strike. However, as he hacked through the gates program, no one appeared. This time, Hurless communication came with a sigh. "I've arrived at the garage. There's no spaceship here. Don't bother wasting your time. There's no one here." Hanzao's eyes twitched. The player in his previous life had needed to break into this scavenger base to get the mission item. But luckily for him, none of the enemies were even home. No wonder no one had appeared despite him having already arrived at their gate. "We really came at a good time." Hanzao was speechless. It turned out that he was fighting with the air all along. He quickly stood up and walked into the base casually. He had already shut down all the defensive measures. After he entered the stronghold, there was indeed no one inside. Although the base was not huge, it had everything it needed. Hanzao spent some time and completely hacked the system firewall, took over control of the base, and went straight to the warehouse. The warehouse was stacked with things collected by the scavengers, most of which was useless. Hanzao was mainly looking for the item that could trigger the mission, and after searching for a while, he found it without any twists and turns. It was a beautiful and detailed mini statue that looked like it was made by some kind of brown wood, yet it was as strong as high-strength alloys. It was the statue of a very strange creature. If it had to be described, it kind of looked like a distorted mantis. As Hanzao picked it up, a low and unclear voice suddenly appeared in his mind. "You have received item introduction. This is a statue that you have never seen before. You don't know what it represents or what meaning it has, but when you touch it, you hear a soft, faint voice speaking to you in your mind. Yet, when you focus on that voice, it disappears." Remarks: "This item seems to possess certain secret knowledge. Some people might be interested in it. This is it." Hanzao's eyes sparkled. This was a mission-triggering item, and he knew the origins of it. This statue was one item included in an item set that came from the Arcane Church and arrived at the central wormhole of the Shattered Star Ring from a distant star field. Then, it wandered and ended up there. The players could receive the related mission through two methods. One was, of course, to get this item first and meet the person that would trigger the mission later, and the other was to first get clues from that person then find the item that would trigger the mission. In conclusion, no matter which method was used, it required a certain amount of luck. However, Hanzao did not need to go through such trouble. He could head straight for the key item. This phenomenon of giving someone an illusion of hearing voices in their head was a characteristic of the psychic current. The psychic current was very unique and could occur through various means, such as the thoughts of many creatures being enchanted onto on target. After a certain amount of time, this item would produce psychic current once it had gathered enough thoughts, like a container of gathered thoughts. The most well-known example would be sacrifices and prayers, and this statue was made from exactly that. "Shall we leave now?" "Don't be in such a hurry. There's no one here, and we have plenty of time." Since they had arrived while the enemy was out, they definitely had to take more things with them. No, that was too petty. They should take the entire place. Without hesitation, Hanzao called Hurless and came to help those scavengers move house. Base system chip. Take it. Defensive devices. Take it. Alloy wall. Take it. After quite some time of tearing things down, whatever could be taken from the base was removed and put into more than a dozen supply boxes. For a mechanic at Hanzao's level, the speed of tearing things down was extremely fast. He roughly estimated that those items could be recycled and turned into more than 2,000 INA's worth of machinery parts. Hanzao looked back. The scavenger base had already become an empty shell with open gates. No, the gates were already gone. Even the floor had been pried open, exposing the wires below the ground. A few days later, the scavenger spaceships finally returned to the planet. They had made quite a good profit from picking up trash near the wormhole clusters, so they were rather joyful. However, when the base with missing gates and an empty interior entered their visions, everyone froze in place. "What the hell? Where's our base?" The scavenger captain rubbed his eyes and made sure that he was not seeing an illusion. His face turned furious, and he howled, "Who tore down our base?" This planet was completely unpopulated, and it was in a very rural area. They had spent quite a lot of resources to build a secret base there and never exposed its position. How could anyone know where their base was? Black Star, the scavenger captain, was stuttering. What were galactic mercenaries of that level doing here? They exchanged looks and were immediately discouraged. Now, they suddenly felt glad they had not been in the base when it happened. If they had faced Black Star, they certainly would have died. Suddenly, the scavengers felt that losing a base was not so unacceptable. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.